It is not a big show unless we are running late. That's what we do. I'm sorry. You're going to have to deal with it. It's a Thursday big show. We're running late. That's the way it goes around here. Our bad. But I promise you, per usual, we will definitely deliver. There's a lot of topics. We definitely want to get into a little bit of the 49ers Ravens game, but more so in a way to move on. What can the 49ers learn? What lessons can they take as they go into this final stretch of the season? That is what's most important. And we're going to talk about that plus more next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And as I said, it is a Thursday night big show edition, which means I've got Coach and Larry with me. Coach, how you doing tonight, my man?
What's good, Jess? What's good, lazy Larry?
What's up, boys? What's going on? How you doing? Merry Christmas,
We gonna
Happy
have
New
a
Year.
good one tonight, boys. We gonna have a good one tonight.
Oh, I am ready to roll. I am definitely Larry. I gotta say, man, the sign looks fantastic. Absolutely love it. Kevin hit me up about a month ago and asked where I got mine. I figured he was going to get you one for Christmas. I'm happy that he did. It looks incredible with the new background. Looking good, man. Looking good.
Seriously, loving it, loving it. Thanks to you, thanks to Kev. I wasn't sure how it was going to be. Wasn't sure, how I didn't get it was kind of what I thought it was going to be, but I thought maybe yours was going to, maybe it was going to be totally flat in the front, but it's actually got some profile. Anyway, very cool. Glad to have it. Glad to be here. Can't wait to talk about this game and this team, because suddenly there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it got a little interesting on us. It got a little interesting.
Man.
Before we get too backed up, I'm going to rock through these super chats that have been waiting since before the show started. The Sophisticated Man says, "What's up, fellas?" Had a very funny comment about Kevin earlier. I'm not going to put it up on the screen, but Kevin, if you're watching, go back and check that out. The Sophisticated Madman comes back and says, "The Jets be green doo-doo. The Browns are killing them." Larry, do you have money on this Thursday night game? I know that you like to.
I took the Browns, but I'm not feeling. What's the score?
Oh, Browns are up 34-17 last time I checked.
They're dogging them.
I took the Browns in the under, so I lost. I've already lost. I had the Browns, but I wasn't sure what go over or under, and I went under, and it's going over.
Two good defenses. You figure they would probably go under. That sucks. All right.
It was a low number. It was a low number, so it's been over for fun.
Yeah, I mean, Browns and Jets, you would think it would be a low number. That's fair. Brother Bob says, "Nails, it's my B-Day. Happy birthday, Nails." He says, "Please don't let PP run super chats." Matt says, "Happy birthday to Brother Bob." And then Brother Bob says, "Thank you, my fellow comment creator." All right, let's get it cracking. First thing I want to talk about is Greg Cosell, who I have the utmost respect for. He is one of the great football minds. His dad was a great football mind. NFL films. I mean, he's one of the best in the business, and I think we can all agree on that.
Is it his dad or is this? I think it's his uncle.
Uncle? What is it? His
Howard,
uncle?
yeah,
I thought
Howard,
it was his dad.
The great Howard.
Yeah.
I think was his uncle.
Was it his uncle? Okay. All right. Well, his uncle. Either way, both great football minds. Greg Cosell made a comment about the 49ers loss to the Ravens. And he said something along the lines of, "Hey, you know what? Not a lot to worry about. They put up a ton of yards. They were on pace for over 500 yards. If you look at the first half, it was just the turnovers. They moved the ball just fine." So, Larry, I'm going to start with you on this one. I know that Cosell is one of your favorites. You've referenced him quite a few times, and I know you respect him. What are your thoughts of this comment here? Do you agree with him, or do you disagree with him on his premise?
Well, I mean, his point is just that it wasn't like the Ravens stopped the Niners per se. It was partially the Niners stopping the Niners. Now, how much do you put on? I mean, to me, it's hard to evaluate Greg's thoughts. I mean, he's just saying, hey, you know what? They had 230 yards of offense in the first half. They could have put up 500 yards of offense against the number one defense, and wouldn't we be talking a different story at that point? But the turnovers are real, and just like anything else. I mean, the same way the turnovers burn them. Brock played good against Minnesota. He got burned by the turnovers though, and he played good against Cincinnati, but he got burned by the turnovers. So turnovers will get you beat every time, and they did in this game. So I think this game is a little bit more interesting than just that. I think there were real things that the Ravens did that we can discuss tonight. And to me, the things that they put on film as bothering Brock Purdy led to my question to Brock today, which is, do you feel like after watching the film that you have answers for what the Ravens did? Because similarly to the way the Niners rushed Jalen Hurts, Cowboys copied it, and Hurts struggled. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Commanders copy some of the things that the Ravens did, and we're going to find out if the Ravens' success against Brock Purdy and the Niners offense was more personnel related or scheme related, because I think some of those scheme wrinkles are going to appear once again, and how the Niners handle it will determine quite a bit.
What about you, Coach? Do you subscribe to the fact that there's almost a moral victory coming out of this this game based off of the way they were able to move the ball before some of the turnovers, or do you not subscribe to that?
Well, no. And I just broke the game down in a couple of ways. And I love Greg Cosell. Like there's a lot of things that I've learned from Greg Cosell, and his word does not change who he is as a man in this sport. But let's just go by the numbers. So the Niners had a total of 492 total yards. Okay. Greg Cosell said that the Niners in the first half, they had what, 232? Didn't he say that right? Correct, Larry?
230. Yeah, he said
Yeah.
230.
Right. So they had 230. They had 230 of those yards in the first half, right? That's with the 3 picks. In the second half, if you go by the play-by-play, the Niners, the score was 33-12 before the Niners turned over on downs on a 7 for 29-yard drive. Okay. It was 33-12. Then they went on a 12-play, 90-yard drive that took up 40 minutes, that took it to 33-19. Then they had another 13-play drive for 47 yards where they threw another pick. That was Sam Darnold's last pick of the game. So if you look at it for when the game was pretty much decided after the Niners threw that last interception, and then the Ravens came right back around and scored 30 and 33 to make it 33-12. Out of that 90-yard drive that happened with 4 minutes, with basically 6 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter, and another long drive that didn't matter, you got about 147 yards of offense tacked off, which puts you at 282 total yards for the day. So if we got 230 in the first half, and we're looking at 282 yards of the day, and then we're looking at damn near 150 yards of garbage time offense, that doesn't necessarily bode well as far as what we saw on film, right? So you can go by the numbers, and the numbers are great. But I feel like that the Niners were a little more focused on X's and O's, and the Ravens were focused on Jimmy's and Joe's. They were focused on individual matchups and beating us to the point of attack in certain scenarios. And they were willing to give up and sacrifice certain things on defense in order for them to keep their true mantra. I feel like a little bit of the progress and the movement that we got on offense was fool's gold in some aspects. And it kind of got us out of our identity. I mean, by the time we threw our third pick, Brock had already let the ball go almost north of 19 times, and we had only ran the ball 12 times with Christian McCaffrey. And the only time that we actually got our first touchdown drive is when we had one drive right before the half where the entire drive was Christian McCaffrey, right? The entire drive was him. So for me, I don't want to get caught up in the weeds with the numbers and the production, because that's quite frankly, that's what we do. We get yards. We move downfield, right? That's what we do. But for me, I'm looking at the end result of what this team has been, what we've been doing with this team, and I'm not too impressed with kind of giving anybody any kind of like any break just because we racked up numbers, right? We made the for what it's worth. I don't agree with anybody putting the picks, right? Because the picks are a symptom of why we lost, but they're not. It's not the true disease of why we lost. The picks are emblematic of Kyle not adjusting when he needed to. After we threw 3 picks, right? By the third pick, it was still the first half, and the score was 13-12 with the touchdown with Christian McCaffrey. We were down 1 point after 3 picks. So I understand that, we can look at the totality of the game and then kind of use it as a buffet and pick out what we want to make our whole narrative. But if you look at where those numbers came from throughout the entire game, you could see where a lot of that stuff is hollow numbers, and we thoroughly got dominated, regardless of what the statistics say.
Yeah, I'd posted on Twitter about this. I was like, "Oh, cool, they got yards, great." And a lot of people are like, "Well, I mean, what he's saying is like the 49ers could." I'm like, "I know what he's saying. My point is the 49ers are a team that, and I still think they actually are, but going into the game, were certainly big Super Bowl favorites. They were fighting for the number 1 seed in the NFL, essentially, not just the NFC, but the NFL. This was for supremacy going into the playoffs and being a clear favorite. And they got boat raced at home. To me, this is not a team that we can say, oh, well, they got moral victories. No. This team is looking to win a Super Bowl. Moral victories need not apply. I don't care about the yards. Yards don't mean points necessarily. They can, but not always. There are teams that are in the top 10 offensively for yards, but they're ranked like 20th in points. Who cares? You know what I mean? So I understand what he was saying to a certain extent, but I also feel like, and I guess this is my biggest concern, I feel like the 49ers are taking on this same thought that Cassell has, which is, we beat ourselves. The Ravens didn't come in and beat us. We beat ourselves. And to me, if that is the approach, that's just the vibe I get. I don't know for sure. I'm not in the locker room. I can just go off of the way that I see it. But if that is truly the way they feel, I think that is a error and judgment on their part, because the Ravens certainly did some things to go out and take that game from the 49ers. That's my feeling on it.
I look at it 2 ways. On offense, the Ravens were phenomenal performance by Lamar. I mean, he was phenomenal. The rest of those guys, no. Flowers was decent, likely made a couple plays, but they didn't run it well. Those aren't good runners. Those receivers that they have, yeah, all of them were taken in the first round, but really Flowers is the guy. Like, he's the guy. Aguilar's been on a bunch of teams. OBJ's had major injuries. Rashad Bateman's kind of a bust. They don't have big time weapons. That's why Lamar deserves the MVP, because Lamar is doing it and he is the guy. There's no fear. He reads the room. He reads the coverage. He moved expertly in the pocket. What I saw when I watched the All-22 was the Niners were defending him to pass at the top of his drop. As soon as he made a decisive movement, they played him like a runner, and
he was still looking to pass.
And he was still looking to pass, and then guys were wide open because they didn't plaster coverage. They weren't all over the guys. As soon as he moved, the coverage loosened and he completed passes. So I don't think they did a great job against Lamar. They definitely didn't wrap him on that 30-yard run in the second quarter. Chase Young should have sacked him. Literally had his hands around Lamar's shoulder pads, but it was way, way too high, and Lamar spun out of it. So I think on offense, I credit Lamar. I don't think the plan was that spectacular. I just think he was not going to be denied, and he's no fear of the rush, and he's a two-way player who can run and throw, and he made enough good throws and enough good runs to win the game. But defensively, they had a great plan. McDonald, the really young coordinator for the Ravens, did his homework. and understood Brock Purdy's tendencies and then countered those tendencies to perfection. And he just basically said, you know what? You can't blitz this guy. Look at the numbers. So, and if you watch the Ravens when they blitz this year, they've blitzed a lot of Queen and Roquan in through the A gaps. But against the Niners, they didn't blitz at all through the A gaps because they knew that Brock would just throw in right behind him to the hot route in the middle of the field. So they didn't want to give him any predefined designed looks or any they didn't want to give him a defined look and have him know where to go. So what they did was they took advantage of the fact that the Niners use the condensed formations and the cornerback off the slot is sitting right there on the line of scrimmage almost, and they blitzed him off the edge and dropped bodies into the middle. So now you've got a quarterback that's being sped up off the edge and all kinds of bodies in the middle of the field. And the Notre Dame kid who's phenomenal, Hamilton. Literally, if you watch the All-22, you can see where he drops deep,
baiting,
doesn't even look at the wide receivers. Like
he's staring at Brock,
staring 100% at Brock. So you got Hamilton, a really good player in the middle of the field, dropping and staring at the quarterback. And then you've got some other really good defenders, Stone and others, Queen and Roquan, all sitting in the middle of the field. They took away all of the underneath stuff. He was 4 for 14 on the short stuff. And they absolutely, they knew where he was going. They knew the windows he was going to be throwing in. And they made those windows really, really small by having all those extra bodies. Brock even commented on it in the postgame. He's like, yeah, the windows were really tight. Well, the windows were really tight because they blitzed you off the edge and dropped guys into the intermediate and in the middle of the field and spied you basically from 20 yards away with Hamilton, and you had nowhere to go, or you had nowhere to go uncontested. And then Brock also, as his tendency is, he's not, it's hilarious that people called him dink and dunk. If anything, he's the impatient guy. He's really impatient and attacks too aggressively. And I think if there was one lesson learned, and it kind of came out today when we talked to him, is that he knows going forward, he's got to be more patient and he's got to take what the defense gives him. And he's probably said 3 times today. I think he had 3 different lines today where he's like, I've got to take care of the ball, but when I asked him about, first of all, he said the stinger was fine, so he's going to play. But his main thing was, he's got to be smart with the ball. And he wasn't smart with the ball in this game. He was very cavalier and burned him. He misread the first coverage. He was very cavalier on the third pick. He threw late in the middle with all kinds of flags on the field. He didn't know if they were on offense or defense. And the other 2 were just kind of bad luck. They got, tipped up. It was a great play by Stevens, who blitzed him off the edge, tipped the ball in the air, and Humphrey made the pick. So it should have probably been a 2-touchdown, 2-pick game. Instead, it wound up being a 0-touchdown, 4-pick game. And then at the end of the game, in the second half, the other thing that really we didn't talk about, but the Niners went from down 16-12 to down 30-12 in a span of 4 Baltimore Ravens offensive plays. So things got away from them quick in that third quarter. And once it was 30-12, Brock was kind of in that kind of screwed up mode mentally where he knew he wanted to attack downfield, but he also knew he didn't want to throw pick number 5. And, Ravens eventually knocked him out of the game. Shanahan could have brought him back in the game, but obviously opted to just, with 3 offensive linemen. Spencer Burford, let's be honest about this too. I love Spencer Burford, great guy. He was a disaster at right tackle. Disaster. So once Burford was there at right tackle and you had Barch at left guard and you had Trent out of the game and you had McKivitz at left tackle, I mean, once you had a makeshift line with guys all over the place, it was like, you know what? No, you're not putting – the only thing that would have been worse than losing that game would have been if the rest of the year was the Sam Darnold show. And Shanahan was at least wise enough to, who was it that told him that he didn't, was it Micah Parsons or somebody who like ripped him, or was it Cam? Somebody ripped him for not being more aggressive late in that game. It's like, dude, why lose your starting quarterback potentially behind a line that's pretty mediocre to begin with and now has 3 guys out of position? So I was kind of happy Kyle, called off the dogs and let Darnold finish, to be honest.
I want to touch on. I think that was the right move too. I agree with you. I want to touch on 2 things that you brought up there. One of them is the condensed formations, and the 49ers are top 3 in the most condensed formations in the league. That is who they are, which is interesting. And the reason I imagine is because they run so much pre-snap motion that you can't run them from like far field to far field and that type of stuff. You only have so much time. But that is something the 49ers do, and that is a tendency. Is that something that can give the 49ers problems against the Ravens always, or is that something you think that they should look to change in the future, Larry?
I think that it gives the Ravens an opportunity to blitz corners and get home.
I agree.
If you don't have condensed formations, now you can blitz your corner, but he's just going to be running at the quarterback. You're not really going to get home. But if you have a condensed formation, man, that guy's going to get home and he's going to be in the lap of the quarterback, and it's going to and also then you control the timing of the play, not the other way around. I thought it was genius. And I also thought it was genius the fact that they flooded somebody said Brock throws to spots. He does throw with anticipation, and they watched a lot of film, figured out where he has thrown the ball a lot, and made sure that they were looking in those spots.
They camped out.
And that's why this next game's so vital, because the film circulates. The Commanders will see it. This week it'll be Cameron Curl sitting in that deep middle. And can the Niners adjust? And when I asked Brock about that today, I said, did you have the answers? And he said, now that you watch the film, and he said, I feel like our game plan was good, but my execution wasn't there. There were plays to be made. So I just think he had check down options that he didn't go to, and he got hyper aggressive and he got burned.
But that's who Brock Purdy is. Like we've been praising him all season for passing up these same things. And now all of a sudden we're like, oh, well, maybe he shouldn't have done that. It's like, well, maybe that's just who he is. Yeah, I guess my question is when you look at Brock Purdy and what you just said about him, and then you look at the 49ers, like those 2 things are kind of intrinsically ingrained in who they are for this season. That's who Brock Purdy's been all season. I don't know that that's just going to change overnight. And then when you look at the tight formations, that's what the 49ers have been all season. So the question becomes, if they face the Ravens again, is that just a bad matchup because they're going to get exploited for these same exact things? Or is this something that they truly can change and adjust before they meet again, if that is the team who they do eventually meet in the Super Bowl? What do you think, Coach?
Well, I love all of the points that Larry brought up because it's exactly what I was seeing in film. Our condensed splits and our condensed formations really hurt us. It allowed the Ravens to come off the edges. It allowed the Ravens to have overhang guys. And when you have a guy or a defender who's left on the overhang on the backside in condensed formations, that guy is usually our point of attack. That's usually who we either kick out, we reach that guy, but they just screamed off the edge every chance they got on the backside. And honestly, I kind of feel like the pick that Brock threw on the screen really was them blitzing. And he just happened to throw the ball quickly enough for them to get that turnover. One thing that I want to highlight on that I don't think can be able to help, and Larry touched on it lightly, is you are correct, Larry. We've been nice, to say the least, about the performance of this offensive line. We've been nice. But Monday was just flat out abysmal. John Feliciano had a horrible day. Spencer Burford had an even worse day. Colton McKivitz was getting stonewalled by big skill and flat out skill players in linebackers and corners, right? He was getting washed back inside, stonewalled at the point of attack in inside zone, outran on outside zone. There are a couple of plays where Brock had to get the ball out with Jake Brindle sitting in his lap multiple times. And this wasn't with great players. We're talking about, I like Matabuke, but Washington, some of their fringe guys, they were doing this to our offensive linemen, not world beaters, right? A lot of fringe depth guys were having this type of success against our offensive line. Also, a couple of things that I wanted to talk about with the Ravens. This is the only team, in my opinion, outside of the Cleveland Browns that plays as fast, as physical, as smart, and they're as conditioned of a defense that we're going to see. These boys, we were tired on offense, and they had more in the tank for us. There was just a different type of feel on what they were doing. I mean, even on I believe that was the 4th pick, by Kyle Hamilton's 2nd pick. He was blocked on that play thoroughly, got back up, got back in the plaster, and got himself a pick. These boys was playing, they were outplaying us one-on-one. They didn't really care about the scheme because I feel as though their coaches handled that. One thing about the offensive line is that I feel like the Ravens used a lot of sim pressure looks up front, simulated pressure, where there were times where, quite frankly, our protections up front were not mirrored with the pressure that we were seeing. There was a lot of times where we were sliding to the wrong side. There were times where they would overload with 3 on one side and maybe have Roquan Smith on the outside by himself, and they would tilt, and you would have 4 linemen blocking two defensive linemen. Or they would loop pressure and sometimes bring Kyle Hamilton on the outside. You'd have 3 linemen blocking 1 defensive lineman. They did a very good job at putting stress on our offensive line. They made our offensive line play 4 quarters. They didn't just let themselves get blocked. There are plays where you could tell that the tempo of the game was a little too much for our offensive line, so much so that you started seeing mental errors. There's one play where Aaron Banks clearly went in the wrong direction of an entire play. I think that was the first run play of the game, where Christian McCaffrey went for 12 yards. The reason why he went for 12 yards is because Aaron Banks went in the wrong direction and created an entire canyon for Christian to just go right behind him, because it was just created a car wreck in the middle of the field. These boys got outplayed up front. I don't feel bad about the performance that I saw out of our skill guys, but I feel like what beat us and the reason why we can talk about the yards and what the skill guys did is because Kyle does such a good job at engineering around this offensive line with leverage, with running hard to the left side. If he runs to the right side, he makes sure that it screens, that the ball gets out quickly. He uses a lot of long extended handoffs, if you will, with a lot of now routes on the right side. He does a lot of creative things over there to get Spencer and Colton out in space so they can block smaller defenders. But the Ravens weren't having it. They played our offensive line and they made them deal with us. And in my opinion, that was the biggest problem up front. I mean, for our offense, is that it wasn't the fact that Kyle, I started out when we lost this game really upset with our lack of running the ball. Like, why weren't we running the ball? This is our identity. But once you run back the tape, we couldn't run the ball unless we dedicated ourselves to a black and blue game. Like, if we were going to really get beat up, that's what we would have been, running the ball, because we didn't even run the ball that much and our offensive line couldn't even handle this game.
I didn't think that 49er offensive line is barely good enough at full strength. And in this game, it wasn't full strength. I also think that the Niners didn't run enough. 14 carries for Christian McCaffrey against a team that was dead last in like 4 major categories against 2 backs. I think that was the recipe for success. They ran it and had success. They just didn't run it enough. Debo had like 2 carries. He should have had like 5. JP Mason should have gotten some runs, and McCaffrey should have gotten about 7 more runs. I thought the Niners should have had a heavy run pass emphasis on the run, and they didn't. I thought that was a major loss. And then as far as one other thing, as far as on the Ravens on the defensive side, a lot of talk from the people that I've talked to around the team that the Niners really were going to try to make Arthur Millette the conflict defender and go at him. And what happened was they put Ronald Darby outside and dropped Humphrey inside. And now you had Marlon Humphrey with Geno Stone and Kyle Hamilton, 3 really good players in the middle of the field, all with great instincts. And you had Queen and Roquan with deep drops. So the windows were very, very small. And Humphrey did a nice job, and Stone did a nice job, and those linebackers did a nice job, and obviously Hamilton was monster until he went out.
And you know who I thought they because you're right, Larry. And I'm sorry for cutting in. Offensively, usually that's what we do. We find a mark and then we kill that area of the field, right? They're on their weakest link. And that's what Kyle schemes around. The weakest guys on their defense. And at first, you saw what they did when they bumped down. I'm not going to step on your take. They did. They bumped down Marlon Humphrey inside. But also, there was a safety that they kept playing around with in Marcus Williams. When Marcus Williams missed that tackle for George to go for 53 yards on the catch from Brock, Marcus Williams had a couple of missed tackles in the open space, but they stuck with him. They made him play man. They made Marcus Williams stay in that hole. That's the player that if the Niners were really going to have success, he was going to be the mark. Marcus Williams was going to be the guy. And the Ravens trusted him. And that's leaning more to what I was saying, where they were willing to sacrifice to keep their mantra of defense. They were not going to be dictated to. They played their style against us, and what was most important to them is that they kept their most physical guys near the line of scrimmage, and that's what they did to us.
Yeah, I do want to make note of the running thing, because I think that there was a lot of conversation throughout the week that I've seen that the 49ers should have ran the ball more. And I don't necessarily disagree with that fully, but there are some things that led to them not running the ball as much. When you look at half, I think it was a disparity of 16 to 12, 16 passes to 12 runs. Really, that disparity could have been 15 to 13. But on the second interception that Brock threw, and this changed the game a little bit too, where initially I thought, oh man, that's just a really good play by the secondary defender there, which it was. 21 made a hell of a play still. But Brock Purdy had the option to hand off or to hit the alert. And he chose not to hand off in that scenario and to throw the alert, and the interception happened. So that's one less run that really could have been, that was essentially called, that Brock decided not to run the ball on, and also threw an interception on that play. And so the two worst things that could happen were you didn't get the ball in Christian's hands and you threw an interception. Both of those take away from your chances to run in the first half a little bit too. So I think that has to be noted. All right, let's get to some of these super chats here. Brother Bob says, PP, thanks for admitting on Cone's show. Well, he did it again. That LJ is the MVP because he has no weapons. Blew us out, and Brock Purdy has all the weapons in the world and had 4 interceptions equals game manager. And Brother Bob says, late B-Day, PP losing a bet. Losing lazy Larry. Brother Bob says, PP, aka Phony Prophet, you still love BP more than Kev? You did say that,
Larry.
Kev was replaceable.
You did say that Kevin was replaceable. By Brock Purdy. You did say that.
That was a joke. And I'll say this.
You got to say that with that brand new sign over your left shoulder.
I don't understand, Brother Bob. Are you a Niner fan? You don't sound like a Niner fan. You sound like somebody who dislikes Brock Purdy for some reason. And guess what? You were all in on Trey Lance. And I believe you're still all in on Trey Lance. And Brock Purdy's in the MVP race. So I would chalk up the L, bro, and move the heck on. Because
that race is
who
done.
should take the L? Anybody who was anti-Brock Purdy to this level and was so pro Trey Lance needs to take the L.
That is true.
Flav says, I think Brock presses a little bit after throwing an interception. It's good that he doesn't get timid, but he also has to stay composed and not force it. Yeah,
he badly wants to win. I mean, he badly wants to win. And in this game, I think, sometimes you gotta own it And in this situation, obviously he's got 4 picks. He's got to own it. But I mean, this to me, guys, was not as much about what the Niners didn't do. This to me, I mean, we can, and we're Niner centric, right? The whole channel, all of our channels are centered around the 49ers. So we look at things through 49er glasses. But you know the old saying, it ain't about you, bro. I don't know that that Monday night was about the Niners. I think Monday night was about Lamar and a great defensive plan by McDonald and a great defensive player in Hamilton. There were other factors. Don't get me wrong; those are not the only factors. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't give the credit where the credit is due. Lamar Jackson played a spectacular game. Said, guys, jump aboard. He was fantastic. And the Ravens had a much better plan than any other team has had against the 49ers. Even Cincinnati. Cincinnati, I think, physically was really, really good. I mean, they had speed to the edge. You couldn't beat them. They had DJ Reed in the middle. You couldn't move them. And then Burrow was great. But the plan that the Ravens had, that young kid McDonald as the coordinator deserves a ton of credit. And then Hamilton is spectacular. I mean, I really think Hamilton's a Canton-bound player. I know that sounds dramatic, but he's special.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
I mean, I think he's inserted himself into a possible DPOY conversation for sure after a game like that. And he's been playing well all season long. I don't think that's hyperbole. But I also want to say the AFC North has been a house of horrors for this 49ers offense and Brock Purdy in particular. Brock Purdy has 4 touchdowns, 9 turnovers, and another 2 fumbles that weren't lost against the AFC North. That division and the physicality that they bring is something that the 49ers really haven't been able to account for outside of that Steelers game, which was week 1.
I mean, the big story that we need to talk about at some point, I'm not sure, not necessarily tonight, but the Cleveland Browns, between their defense and the way that Joe Flacco is playing right now, are going to upset somebody in the playoffs.
What did I say to you, Jesse?
Somebody major.
Right before we started, you just said that. Yep.
They're going to beat somebody.
They got 10 wins. They're going to get, they're coming up on their 11th win of the season. So nobody wants to see the Browns are going to ruin somebody's season. They're going to ruin somebody's season. They're hot. Joe Flacco's looking good. I want to shout out my boy Marcus, one of my best friends. He's the one who pointed this out to me. Like, Joe Flacco has thrown for over 300 yards in like 4 or 5 games since he's been playing, and he's well over 300 yards in this game.
He's averaging like 350 a game. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like for a guy like Joe Flacco, big arm, had to play against that Ravens defense week in and week out at practice. I feel like he's probably pretty much having the time of his life with this 4-lane highway of an NFL. You know what I mean? Like, he can air it out. And one thing that we do know with Cleveland is that even with PJ Walker, they didn't necessarily have a passing game against us, but they ran all over us. Cleveland, that is. So if they actually have like some type of like competent quarterback in Joe Flacco, who's actually been to the show and won, like, they're a live body. They can beat anybody. I kind of feel that way about the Rams as well. Like, the Rams they're in a way, they're like 2021 us. They're getting hot at the right time. They got banged up early. They weathered the storm. Everybody's kind of coming back at the right time. Kyron Williams is the second leading rusher in the NFL. Let's not forget that. And this is when their running game wasn't even really cohesive earlier in the league year, but they were still doing it. Like, I remember, I think they played the Giants and they lost that game, but they still ran the ball for 30 times. So they're trying to get back to a resurgence to try to get their stuff together. So, you know, that Rams game that's not a foregone conclusion. That's going to be a game.
And look at their points. Look what they've scored. They scored 30 last week against the Saints. They scored 28 the week before that. When they lost to the Ravens, they scored 31. When they beat Cleveland, they scored 36. When they beat Arizona, they scored 37. I mean, they have been held under 20 since November 19th. And, you know, so, I mean, it's like
They're the
and
most
that's when
efficient
Stafford-
offense in the
that-
NFL the
and
last
that's when
5 weeks.
Stafford was hurt.
And
Yeah,
they
so-
put up 30 points. They put up 30 points on both the teams that we only put up 19 and 17 points on, respectively. They put up over 30 points on the Ravens, and they put up over 30 points on
Cleveland.
on the Browns.
Look at this too. I mean, Kyron Williams, 4 of the last 5 games, he has well over 100 yards, and they've had either Puka or Cup go for 100 receiving for the last month in every game. So I mean,
Jesse,
their
wasn't it
weapons
you?
are legit.
Wasn't it you who told me about having Puka Nacua? I believe it's either you or Grant, but the Rams, since having Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, Tutu Atwell, and Cooper Kupp all on the field at once. At the same time, since they've been on the field at once, they rank first in the league for their offense.
They're first in efficiency in almost every statistical category when they've had Kyron, Puka. I think it's Kyron, Puka, Everett, Cup, and Stafford. Yep.
Yeah.
And if the Niners things don't go well, there's a chance. You'd have to see the way it all pans out. But I believe one of the options is if the Niners do lose that number 1 seed and have to play that first weekend, they could wind up playing the Rams back to back. They could play them in week 18 and then have to play them the very next week. So this season could, if the Niners can't defend the Rams, or lose this game to the Commanders, or both, the season could be over before it even started playoff wise.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say this guy's name, but thank you for $5. Looks like you donated over at Larry's. Matt says, bottom line, as a team, we are not mentally tough. I don't feel like we can win when we are behind. All 4 losses show that.
That's a great point.
That's true.
Well, I don't know. I think that, the bigger question I would have is not for Brock's mistakes were he got too aggressive, should have taken the check down. But Kyle's mistakes were you're going up against a team that was dead last against 2 backs in the run game, and your star running back had 14 rushes, and you didn't run the ball enough. So I'm not sure why that was the case, but that one bothers me. And I if you want to say what's a common denominator of Kyle's struggles as a head coach, and I love Kyle, if you tell me, bet everything you have that he wins a Super Bowl or doesn't, I would bet that he wins a Super Bowl at some point in his career. But man, I mean, if you want to point to his common denominator of his failings is that he gets a little pass happy and sometimes goes away from the run when he shouldn't.
I agree.
I feel like Kyle makes big games his personal chance to show how smart he is rather than trying to win the game. I feel like in the biggest stages of all of our games, Kyle just outthinks himself. And when you watch our teams play, it's all about the preparation of the plays and the intricacy of how we get things done. And it's not more or less letting the boys just play loose and go win their game. And as a coach, there is an element of putting 20 on 10 when you need to just get out of the way. You need to put together the script where it's not about what are the best plays that are going to get the best results and where can we find all of their weaknesses. That's an element of game preparation, but that's not everything. Half of what you're doing is you need to put in about 50% of just our confidence stuff, our stuff that we run no matter what. And that's what frustrates me when we do see our team play, because what are our gotta have it plays where hey man, we're doing this and we don't care if we're doing this because we're good enough to get away with this, right? What's our brotherly shove, right? What's our play where it's like, all right, things are going crazy. We just threw 3 picks. Let's slow it down and go back to what we do unequivocally, undeniably good. Like, is it inside zone? Is it outside zone? Is it gap scheme? Is it duo? What are we doing? And when those moments happen to us in games, we don't have a bread and butter because our bread and butter is having options. But when the chips are down and you really need to go win a game, you need to go pick your first choice, not options. And that's the problem that I see when we're down in games, where we just kind of have paralysis by analysis. We don't know what we're doing.
And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, what I mean by that is just you don't win the grimy games as we've described in the past. Well, guess what happens? You get into a grimy game, nobody thinks you're going to win. I never felt like they were going to win that game. Many people in the stands probably didn't feel like they were going to win that game. I bet you there were Niner players that would never admit it publicly, but they didn't think the Niners were going to win that game. Why? Because they haven't won a game like that all year.
Yeah.
So sometimes you got to win you got to win multiple ways so that everybody, including your players, believe that you can win multiple ways.
Mm-hmm.
Brother Bob says, PP, shouldn't an elite quarterback and head coach recognize this and adjust? I don't know exactly
What's this?
he's referring to. I don't know. We've talked about quite a few things, so I'm not sure.
But
Brother
the answer
Bob
would
goes
be
on-
yes. The answer would be yes, but let's see what it looks like. I'm saying you're going to see more of it this week, and let's see if they adjust.
Brother Bob went on your channel to post this super chat, and I got to imagine it was to stir up things because he knows how the crowd is over there. He says, Trey Lance is better than Brock, PP. Nice, Brother Bob. Cryptic says, do you think...
I don't know about that, bro.
Do you think Shanahan and Purdy were too aggressive with the pass? If this matchup happens again, should they set up the run to establish play action?
I just think
how much play action was in this game? Not much.
I laid out my case. I think that there was running options and they threw.
They
And
had
the quarterback
success
had the choice to throw.
throwing too, though. See, that's the one thing. They got a little impressed with themselves because they had a couple of
Fool's gold.
nice completions on that first drive, and I think they got a little impatient and a little pass happy. I think I would have ran it down their throat and protected my defense a little bit more. And to me, that's the way. If you were playing them again, how would you do it? I think you would play a lot of ball control, try to jump up on the scoreboard without putting the ball in the air, and then see, because the one thing I don't believe the Ravens can do, I don't believe the Ravens can come back. I don't think they could come back from a big deficit if they trail. I don't think they've got the weaponry to do it. And I really believe they're a team. They're a bully team, and they've got to get that lead. But credit them because they were tremendous in this game. And also, people that were down on the field before the game, I said to a buddy of mine who knows what he's talking about right before the game, he's like, man, I was down on the field. The Niners are smiling, taking pictures with Santa Claus and their families and this and that, all happy. The Ravens were as serious as a heart attack. So I just felt like the Niners mindset may not have been the right mindset.
I'll say this too: the Ravens are probably going to be a little bit more scary if they do meet in a Super Bowl. By all intents and purposes, it does sound like Mark Andrews will be back for a Super Bowl scenario. So now that's something else that you got to add in to deal with because that ain't making things easier.
No.
Let's see. Brother Bob says Kyle only has condensed formation since the beginning. That's what I'm saying. It's tough, right? Like if this is what Kyle does, then he's likely not going to break tendency for one game. I mean, maybe he would, but he's really going to have to change a lot of things, and that makes it interesting.
Well, I just want to add to that. If you look at how they started the game, they started out in 5 wide. They started out spreading them out, right? I just feel as though that they started spreading them out and they started understanding that this is the issue that I have in our passing game. Who can get open on their own, right? Who can get open outside of zone when they're playing man? Who can get open? And not only who can get open, but who can stay on time and actually fight and go get a ball. This is a game, honestly, where I feel like Juwan Jennings was sorely missed. We needed that tough slot. We needed somebody on the inside to have that proverbial run game with the extended handoff, with those short intermediate routes that he runs. We needed somebody on the edge to help us block better on the edges, to start beating up on Marlon Humphrey, to start beating up on these corners in Kyle Hamilton. I would have loved to see Juwan Jennings locked up with Kyle Hamilton in the open field. That's physicality that we missed. I just feel as though that these boys with the Ravens, they they're a lot like Cleveland in that they're just stout across the board. And one of the things that we love to do offensively is we love to be physical on the fringe elements on a defense. So what we love to see is, Trent Williams coming out, popping out on arc releases for outside zone, or pulling out on trucks for inside zone. And what do you see Trent Williams mostly doing? He's in the open field beating up on somebody that he's 50 pounds heavier than, right? It's just, that's the majority of what you see, right? Not a lot of times are you going to see our boys, going up top to the second level or bodying somebody their size. It's just not what we do. And that's by design. Kyle gets those boys out in that edge to run, to find likely matchups that he likes. But things get a little hairy when you get a Patrick McQueen and a Roquan Smith who refuse to be beat, right? And you got a Kyle Hamilton that comes out on the first play from scrimmage and makes an open field tackle on Christian McCaffrey and doesn't need help. That's a weapon. When you got a safety that can go hunt and go kill what he eats, that's a whole different ball game, because we predicate ourselves on what? Not catching the ball, not the scheme, but the yak. What these guys do after they get the ball. Kyle's biggest advantage that he says that he gives our players is he puts these boys in a position that when they get the ball, they can do something with it, right? They can get out and make and be physical in the open field, right? And that's where our physicality lies. I just feel as though that the Ravens had a really good bead on keeping us bottled up, right? If you're looking at boxing, they stayed in our chest. They didn't give us a chance to come back with a light jab. They stayed close to us, and they gave us body blows. They fought us in a phone booth, and we didn't have enough leverage because they held us by the belt buckle the entire game.
They were Joe Frazier to our Muhammad Ali. Matt McEwen says Baltimore's D-line knew what way they were sliding constantly. Joey Mellon says, have any of y'all looked into Ayuk in the game? In what sense, Joey? Not quite sure. Not quite sure.
By the way, Matabuke was
played
phenomenal.
well.
I thought Matabuke,
he had his way.
Always phenomenal. He's always phenomenal.
But in this particular game, man, he was just so fast and so made so many plays. I mean, Kyle Van Noy's just a guy. Clowney at this point's old. These guys are not elite edge guys. But man, Matabuke is so fast and he's so active that they can play that gigantic Pierce next to him, and he absorbs blocks, and then Matabuke just runs all over the place. I thought Travis Jones, Matabuke, and Pierce really did a nice job inside.
Also, though, I mean, but when you have that, right, when you have Matabuke and you have those interior stout, this is the one thing that I'm impressed with their interior. They're conditioned. They can run, and they're just as nimble, and they can get sideline to sideline and still be stout, right? That's rare to be able to have that type of combination in today's D lineman. Either you're kind of like tilting on both sides. Either you're running and you're a tweener, or you're a Vita Vea, basically, right? These boys have the girth and the strength and the athleticism to get sideline to sideline with power, strength to power, right? But if you look at it, I agree with you, Larry. I really wasn't necessarily blown away with Jadeveon Clowney or what they were doing on the edges. Not really, but it gives Jadeveon Clowney that one-on-one matchup that he can get every time because of what those boys are doing on the inside. When they're flowing towards Jadeveon Clowney's side, all he's got to do is just pin Trent, because he knows that they're giving havoc on the backside. There's no cut lanes, and they're coming anyway. So he's really just holding up until the brigade comes. And honestly, that's what our defense is supposed to be built like. I want to talk about this. I was not pleased with how our edges did in this game, particularly Chase Young, and Nick Bosa had a lot of missed errors. He did. So what do you guys feel about our rushes? There was at one point where the longest run of Lamar Jackson's season was the 30-yard run. That's the longest run he's had this whole year. And you may have seen where Fred Warner, he missed a tackle, and I tweeted about this. It looked bad because he didn't even touch him, right? But the real problem is that Chase Young went for broke selfishly on a speed rush because he thought he was going to get a move. He broke contain, got out of his rush lane, and then Lamar went right up under him, and there was nobody there in the B gap. Nobody there in the D gap.
You talking about the second quarter run?
Yeah, I don't feel like
Chase went too high. He was tackling him above his shoulder pads almost. I mean, it's like you gotta go lower there against Lamar. I mean, and Bosa, I mean, I love Bosa, but Bosa didn't have a single hit on the quarterback the entire game. You're making $18 million a year. I mean, Brent Urban had 3 hits on Niner quarterbacks, and Nick Bosa had no hits on Lamar. So that wasn't, I mean, the Niners need to get more. I thought Gregory was playing his ass off, to be honest, as far as he was making plays and running all over the place. And
he's been playing better than Chase, in my opinion.
To me, Randy Gregory looked like more impactful than Bosa or Chase.
I just want to point this out that there were some of us this offseason that were willing to trade Bosa for Lamar, and a lot of people weren't on board with that. But, just letting you know, we kind of saw that played out.
Do you think we would have had the nuts to pull it off, Larry? You think we would have pulled that off?
I don't think the Ravens would have gone for that, right? I mean, who would their quarterback be? Tyler Huntley?
No.
I had offered. My offer was Bosa, Trey, or Bosa, Purdy, whoever they liked more. Bosa, Purdy, Bosa, Trey, and a first-round pick for Lamar. That was my offer.
Bosa, Burt, Purdy, and Trey.
Yeah, you can take your choice.
Take them all.
I mean, no.
You want Sam Darnold too?
You want Sam Darnold too?
I believe Lamar might have been the final draft choice of Ozzie Newsome, who was at the game Monday night. Lamar. Lamar's never going anywhere. He's going to be a lifelong Raven.
Dude, this is my thing. I don't think Kyle could coach Lamar. Could you see Kyle yelling at Lamar?
Scary good, potentially. I mean, if you had Lamar in Kyle's system, I mean, Kyle's system works and Lamar is courageous as hell. It wouldn't look the same. He'd have a bunch of different looks, but I think Lamar could be even more unstoppable in Kyle's system.
Could you imagine Lamar and Debo and CMC and what that mesh point would look like? Good freaking luck, man. Good freaking luck.
Hang it up.
Cryptic says the Ravens are injury riddled more than any team in the league, and they still put up 30. I do not like the Niners' injury excuses. I agree. I mean, injuries are not an excuse. They happen every year. Green Bay, the year that Green Bay beat Pittsburgh, they had like 26 players on IR, and then they lost Woodson in the middle of the Super Bowl and still won. So no, I'm not with the injury stuff.
Yeah, that was the record, I believe, and maybe to this day still is.
Yeah. Brother Bob says wrong. I was never a Lance
2010
lover.
Packers.
That's
weren't they crazy hurt?
I'm talking about the team that won the Super Bowl against Pittsburgh, whatever year that was.
Yeah, the Packers. That was Woodson's team. Yeah, he was a safety. Yeah.
Yeah, where have you been? I just said this. Brother Bob says wrong. I was never a Lance lover. You say that to distract. Leave Lance out of it. You sound like DB. I don't dislike Purdy. I dislike your obsession for him.
There's no
All right,
obsession.
you two get a room.
There's no obsession. I mean, seriously, the guy was Mr. Irrelevant, and now he's in the running for the MVP.
Mm-hmm.
And you've had about
it's a fantastic story.
Supers anti-Purdy. So I don't know if that you can actually say that.
Keith says, I thought Lamar played well, but not amazing. That game was won on their defense. They were amazing. I guess. I mean,
they were not amazing.
Whoa.
They were not amazing.
What did he say? Bring that back up.
Ran the ball.
He said Lamar was not amazing.
I thought Lamar played well, but not. Dude, stop.
He had no running game. No running game.
He's their leading rusher. That's what it is.
He did it all.
He does so much for them. It doesn't equate what's happening on the field. He is their offense.
Zay Flowers is nice, but
Zay Flowers is very good.
But I mean, come on.
They have pieces.
Every team in the NFL has a weapon. Their weapons are pedestrian.
Well, to be honest with you,
their line is pedestrian because Ronnie Stanley is hurt. To me, the biggest disappointment was the fact that the Niners didn't put more pressure on Lamar with Ronnie Stanley just being. I mean, I talked to Jason La Canfora, I talked to their beat writer from The Athletic. Both guys were like, man, Ronnie Stanley is just like bad. He's not looking like Ronnie Stanley of old. And in this game, you would have thought he was Ronnie Stanley at his full powers.
Hey, man.
Yeah, he's a shell of himself.
He is a shell of himself. Ronnie Stanley's not what he used to be, but that offensive line is game. I like Linderbaum. Linderbaum is one of the best centers in the league. Okay, I like Zeitler. Zeitler is an upper echelon. He's an upper echelon guard. He's not class personified like your boy over here in Indy, but he's good, right? And PFF has him 16th out of 78 guards. Linderbaum is 7th out of 37 guards, and Simpson is 37 out of 78 guards. So they may not. And then Morgan Moses is 13th out of 84. So their offensive line, I get it. Individually, they may not be world beaters, but if you know how O-line works, man. It's about how a group plays together that makes a good O-line. And you get enough higher end guys together that all know how to play with each other, they could be a force. And I'm going to be real with you. Lamar was kind of sitting back there for a while. He was, I mean, on top of his athleticism notwithstanding. I'm not going to sit here and act like he's not Lamar, but the offensive line, they did okay against us, right? And when they ran the ball when they needed to.
Well, they averaged, the numbers showed that they averaged the biggest gain, 5.8 per carry, when they ran the ball in the A gap between Linderbaum and Zeitler. This was coming into the game. That's the area they ran the ball on the goal line with Edwards for the one touchdown where he went in untouched. Then they punch it in right between Linderbaum and Zeitler on the right side of the A gap. So I thought for the most part, the Niners did a pretty good job at plugging that hole, but that was their strength of this O-line was Linderbaum, Zeitler on those combo blocks.
Okay, got that one. Keith follows it up and says, shout out to the AFC North for not becoming finesse like the rest of the league and leaning into physicality. Cleveland is going to do more than ruin somebody's season. They can come out of the AFC. What's interesting about them is they have three of their starting offensive linemen are injured. 3 of their starting 5 offensive linemen are out for the year, and they're still doing this. It's insane, man. If they were a healthy team right now with Joe Flacco under center, they would probably be the favorite to win the Super Bowl. They're scary.
On paper, their offensive line was thought to be a strength coming into the year, and it's been anything but. And yet, and they lost Nick Chubb, and they lost Deshaun Watson, and yet here they are.
I think losing Deshaun Watson for Flacco is an upgrade at this point.
It is an upgrade.
Which is amazing to say.
Yeah. Matthew Sanders says BA wanted to be fed. CMC was red hot. Debo ate a tackle. Trent was hopping mad. This team is tough. I don't want to hear it. Just got to cut the Kyle BS. Listen, this team over the last few years, in my opinion, has traded in some of that big physicality, over the top toughness for a little bit of finesse. I'm not saying they are finesse, but they're more finesse now than they were in 2019, in my opinion. They are not tough like AFC North tough. There's a difference. They're tough compared to like the Dallas Cowboys, sure.
Yeah.
But they're not tough compared to Baltimore. Baltimore's not going nowhere. You think
like
that
we're
they're
show
tough
pony
like Baltimore
tough.
Or Cleveland? No, they're not.
Yeah, like we're like glitzy tough. We're like mainstream tough. You know what I mean? Like we're kid. You know, remember the Kids Bop CD sets that used to come out where all of the hottest hip hop joints, but it would be kids singing them. We're like the Now records, right? And then like the Ravens are like actual hip hop. Like we're tough to other teams who say they're tough, but the Ravens and the Steelers and the Browns, they have an identity, right? They don't know how to do anything else but play this way, right? And I do agree with you. That's why you don't necessarily see these guys deeper into the season, because I agree with you, Larry. Like they beat up on each other so much that either they're all hurt by the end of the season and they're not good enough to play against teams that actually have enough health, or they get phased out because they don't have enough offense, right? But I kind of feel like the mantra of this year's league is that, a lot of finesse teams are doing good. Like Dallas is even good this year. And I don't think that they're a physical team at all.
I don't think the Niners have as finesse. The only finesse player that I could even point to on the 49ers would be Jake Brendel.
I don't think they're finesse, Larry. I think that compared to Cleveland and Baltimore, they're not tough, is what I'm saying. They're not as tough as those teams. They're just not.
I'll mention
and I think those games proved it.
I'll mention it to Javon Kinlaw tomorrow. Hey, Javon, you know what? You're not that tough. We'll see. How do you think that's going to go for me? This might be the last live stream you ever see from me. I might mention that, and that'll be it. Javon will just cut off my air, and I'll be done.
And that's the thing, like when you say a team ain't tough, and then when you say a team ain't tough, like it's not the individual players. It's not one-offs, but as an identity, that's not who they are.
I think they are pretty tough. I mean, like some teams have diva weapons, not the Niners. I think,
what would you consider a diva?
A diva weapon would be like just somebody who's like a total speed based guy. I hate to say it, maybe Jalen Waddle a little bit.
So you think Tariq Hill is a speed base? He's a diva weapon?
No, Tariq's different. But I think that like Kittle, the guys who run around and not through, like Danny Gray would be kind of a finesse guy. But Kittle ain't, Ayuk ain't, Debo ain't, JJ ain't. The Trent's not, Banks is not. Those guys are not finesse. Brendel is finesse. Brendel's finesse. Big John Feliciano ain't. Colton McKivitz is not great, but he's not finesse. And on defense, I don't see a lot of finesse on their front or on the second level. You could argue that Hafanga would be kind of a finesse player. What
about Fred?
I guess you could argue that, but Fred's so spectacular at what he does. Yeah, you're right. I go Fred. Fred's kind of an elite finesse linebacker. Yeah.
I guess I want to be clear about my statement. I'm not saying that they are a soft team. What I'm saying is they're probably, I don't know, the fifth, let's say the top 5 in toughness, I guess, in the league. 2019, they were the team. They were the physical team. They were the Mavericks of the league,
the bullies,
in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right now, I don't think they are the outlier in physicality, size, toughness, all those things that they were in 2019. Still very tough, but they have traded in some of that toughness for a little bit of the finesse side of things.
Yeah, and like you wouldn't say Javon Hargrave is good. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jess.
Yeah, and so basically that's all I'm saying. To me, they're just a level below Baltimore, Cleveland, and those teams when they met did kind of show that. They did expose that a little bit, and that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, like Javon Hargraves is a finesse lineman to me. He's not a physical. He's not Matabuke. Like, you know what I mean? Like Javon Hargraves is like a 3 tech who likes to get one-on-one with guards and use his power on, pass rushing, but he's not like stout in the gap, like refusing to be reached, causing piles, because like the best that I've seen him do is being stout in the run game isn't necessarily holding down a gap, but getting penetration and getting a tackle for loss. You know what I'm saying?
He's an interior rusher. It's become more such a passing game now that it's like, it's hard to even, what if you really want, I think physical, I think of Whitner, Goldson, and that group that Harbaugh had with,
I agree with you. But my thing is that what you were going to say, Larry, I agree 100%. It's hard to find those guys, but Baltimore has it. That's the point.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? It's like, I understand what you're saying, but we can't act like we can't. I could see if we were talking about a level of physicality in football and in pro football that quite frankly doesn't even exist anymore, right? Like I could see if we were talking about 10 years ago of, what type of football we would want to see. But what we're talking about is the game now. And there are teams that are noticeably more physical than us. And they have the record to see us later in the Super Bowl. That's the only point. It's not, oh, we're the weakest team in the league and we're shit weak and, we're too finesse, like whatever. I'm not trying to say all that. What I'm saying is that our identity is we are a physical running team with a stout defense and we play complementary football. Would you all agree with that? Is that not our identity?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, you brought up Kinlaw, right? And I'll say this real quick, Larry. I don't think you want to be locked into a room with Kinlaw or in an alley with Kinlaw. But when you compare him to some of these people movers on offensive line, there are times where he gets pushed out of the way relatively easy.
He gets moved.
Yeah.
I don't care how good your mean grill is. You can bite as many squirrels as you want, but the tape don't lie. Like, he gets moved.
I just don't want to be the one to have to tell him.
No, don't. Don't do that. Larry, I like you. I want to see you on Thursdays. All right. I don't want to.
I got you.
Kinlaw told him he gets moved in the run game. Kinlaw moved Krug to Cupertino.
He literally bit his head off like he was a squirrel. That was crazy.
Yeah.
And we watched it happen and nobody did anything. Brother Bob says that was not him that said that Trey Lance is better on your channel. That was
being impersonated. Now you've really made it.
Impersonated. Brother Bob says if someone mentions Purdy looks bad, you mention Lance. Why can't you take the L? Your lover lost MVP and now be a Niners fan and root for the Super Bowl.
I do. Oh, so basically what Brother Bob is trying to say is he feels as though that your fandom is at question because you've completely tilted all things Brock. And now that Brock seemingly has been ousted from the MVP race because of the Monday night game, he wants you to come back into the fold of being a Niners fan and focus on the Super Bowl. I feel like that's what Brother Bob is trying to say.
I don't really view myself anymore as a true fan, but I'll say this. I feel like I asked the hard questions. I'm the one who did say to Brock, hey, you know what? The people that I'm talking to, Brock, say that you're the weak link going into Philly. I didn't say, hey, you're going to beat them. I told him the truth. And what the people that I talked to in Philly said that you're the weak link. So I don't know. You say what you want to say. Do it, any way you want to slice it. I feel like I knew who I am. And I asked the guy tough questions when there are tough questions to be asked.
When did you ask him that?
Going into the Philly game. I said, hey, man, the people that I'm talking to in Philly say that you're the reason that the team's not going to win, that you're the weak link. How do you feel about that? Mm-hmm. And, he said what he said. He was fine with it. But I just wanted to, since it was true, and I know that he's one of these guys that needs that chip on his shoulder, I figured, well, let's throw it out there and see how he reacts. And NFL Network jumped on it after they won and made it a big whatever tweet or whatever they did to it.
Daza says, is there any news on Trent and the health of the O-line in general? We don't want to see Barch again. Yeah, the Jalen Moore still has a concussion, is in protocol. It does sound like Banks is probably not going to play with a toe, although
he didn't practice.
Williams is practicing and is likely going to play. So there is.
So John back at left guard.
So
probably.
What's that? John Feliciano
back at left guard.
Left guard. Yeah.
Probably Feliciano at left guard, Brendel at center, Burford at right guard, and
McKivitz at right tackle.
Yeah, we're almost.
They had a bad game. They just did up front, and you can't. It's 2 games left, and this is the last thing I want to do. I don't want to get to the summer and we start doing all of these like recaps and going over the year, and then start saying all of this stuff about the team that we could have said while they were playing. And the facts is that we've been holding back for. We have power. We do. We have, and that's why we're responsible with what we say about the team and how we break certain narratives and takes, because we understand that part of the reason why Trey Lance got traded the way he did is because of the fan outrage. It's because of the response that it would have had throughout the entire year. So I'm tired of our offensive line. Like, they're bad.
I know, but think about it, Coach. If we bitched about it all year, there was never going to be anything done about it because there was nothing to do. So that's why, like for me personally, why I haven't complained more about this offensive line. Like at the trade deadline, because there was no trade upgrade. There was nothing. It was like the guys that they have were the guys that they were going to roll with. But there's no doubt that this offseason, whether the Niners win the Super Bowl, lose the Super Bowl, or fall woefully short, the offensive line is the theme of this offseason. And improving
it has to be. It has to be.
Is objective number 1, 2, 3. You know what I mean? It's like there's no doubt. There's no doubt.
They don't spend a first-round pick on the O-line. It's going to be a major disappointment.
It's going to be a major
O-line, corner, safety. Okay, O-line, corner, safety. That's it.
Like maybe receiver if they wind up trading Ayuk for a number 1 pick for an.
I trade Debo before I trade Ayuk.
You know what I'm saying? I don't think either's getting traded this offseason.
Yeah,
we'll see though.
Sense that neither is either.
Yeah.
Fantasy says, listen, our biggest foe is us, plain and simple. Okay.
Nah.
I hope the team doesn't take on that mindset.
Yeah, that don't tell them that.
Dominic says, what are the biggest free agent decisions heading into 2024 aside from BA and Chase? Armstead and Dre? No, Armstead and Dre are locked up. These last few weeks just demonstrates how top heavy we are. What are the most likely restructures? Stop restructuring. How about that? How about stop restructuring and extending guys like Armstead who are on the other side of 30 that can't make it through a whole season? How about we start there? That's what I would like to do. John says the MVP talk is why the 49ers lost. Kyle's game plan sucked and Purdy really sucked. Larry, the 49ers need to run the ball effectively to set up the pass, not pass to set up the run. I don't know why you said Larry. I think Larry agrees with you. You agree, Larry?
Well, I mean, you could do it are we talking about against the Ravens? Are we talking about generally? I mean, you can do it either way. You can run to set up the pass to set up the run. My thing at the end of the day is when a team is dead last against 2 backs and you run 2 backs 60% of the time, the second most of any team in pro football, that plays right into your strength. And I don't think they leaned into their strength enough. I think instead of trying to achieve offensive balance as the goal in every game, how about just come up with a plan that you think is going to win every game? And if you're balanced, great. If you're not balanced, great. If you feel like you can pass all day to beat a team, then pass all goddamn day. And if you feel like you can run the ball down their throat and win a game, then run the ball down their throat. And the numbers said that they could have run all day on this Ravens team. And then the fact of the matter is McCaffrey averaged 7 yards a carry. So I just want to see more runs, a little bit less balance in this particular game.
Larry, I agree with you. I mean, look at what we did in 2019 against the Packers. We threw the ball 8 times, and Kyle did not care. He did it with a straight face. Like, they can't stop this. We're going to run this all day.
He believes in Brock as a passer, which is great.
And you can tell, and that's my worry, because Kyle, we all know that Kyle gets tunnel vision on things that he believes should be done on the field. Right? If Kyle sees something, he's like a dog with a bone. He'll gnaw at that thing all day to the point where sometimes it's really good for us, and then sometimes it's really bad for us, right? As fans. And for me, maybe Kyle's new spam button is Brock. Maybe Kyle says, you know what? I've got these passing concepts that work with Brock because he sees it no matter what. He understands what defense is coming up against this, and this is what we're going to do. Like, maybe he's leaning on Brock, you know, and if that's what he's doing, he's stupider than I thought, because you got the leading rusher in the NFL. You know, you need to just throw. I mean, we got the leading rusher in the NFL, and we got the highest paid fullback in the NFL. Line up in the eye and get the ball to Christian. Like, and I don't think he played as if he knew that we were not stout enough up front. That's what that game plan told me. He tried his best to stay away from them physically up front.
You threw 46 times and you ran it 18 times, and it was a 4-point game at halftime. And you have
Yeah,
the
but it
number
was
one.
also 16-12 at halftime, though. Like that, and then all of a
That's what I'm
sudden,
saying. But I'm
boom,
saying
they
the
scored
game.
so quickly twice that was it. Like they scored so quickly to start that second half that was it.
No, I
But
know,
the
but I
only
mean,
drive they had was when they dedicated themselves to Christian for that drive.
even when they went up
Like,
30 to, even when the Ravens had 30, you still.
You're muted,
muted.
Larry. Larry, you're muted.
There we go.
Okay.
What I was saying is just that
When they
the
scored 30,
game,
they
the
still
game was close, and you were running it effectively. It wasn't like the game. It wasn't like the game they were. Even when the Ravens had 30, the Niners had plenty of time to run the ball, and they got a little pass happy. They just, to me, they had a major advantage in the run game, and they didn't take advantage of it.
I don't necessarily disagree, but I guess I'm going to play a little devil's advocate here. We sat here on Thursday, and one of the questions that you asked Larry on Thursday was, "Who's your MVP?" I said CMC, Coach. I think you said CMC. Larry, you said Brock Purdy.
You said Brock. Yeah.
Right.
So for me to then come back after the fact and say, "Hey, I didn't think CMC was the MVP of this team, let alone the league. I thought it was Brock Purdy." And now I'm a little upset that they didn't put it in his hands or in the not MVP's hands and did put it in the MVP's hands. I mean, I feel like that's kind of going against you picking Brock as the MVP a little bit.
No, because it's too simplistic. It's all about your opponent and what your opponent's strength is or relative weakness. And their relative weakness, I mean, let's be honest here. They have a good defense, right? Forget what the number said. Do the Ravens have a good defense? Yes.
Great.
Is it the best defense, second best, third best, whatever? Who knows? But it's a very good defense. We would all agree with that.
Yeah.
They were dead last defending the run in two-back situations. The Niners run two-back 60% of the time. And had success running it in this game. When you have those kinds of numbers, when a team's dead last, that supersedes whether, Brock Purdy's had the best year of any quarterback, and it's been historically in recent history a quarterback award. That's why he's my MVP, because how could it go to anybody else if you're not if you're going to go with a quarterback, and I was going to go with a quarterback, I'm going to go with the quarterback with the best numbers, which would be Brock Purdy. But that doesn't mean that you have to throw the ball all day. I mean, you're talking about a Ravens team that has really, really good people in the middle of the field and are really, really good against the pass in how they defend because there's the uniqueness of their speedy linebackers. So all I'm saying is if you didn't have success running it, that'd be one thing, but you had success running it and the numbers told you that you were going to have success running it, you should have run it more. That's my point.
I mean, I feel like, the Ravens is the level of defense and the level of play what the Ravens gave us that's kind of like what we're going to see in the playoffs. The gimme games are over, in my opinion. I mean, after the Commanders game, we're pretty much going to see the best of the best for the rest of the way out. And for me, we can't look at like the Ravens defense being kind of like an anomaly. The Chiefs have a very good defense as well. Cleveland, who we just talked about, who's coming on hot, has a defense. I mean, right about now, the only teams that we're favorably going to be seeing near the end of the season and in the postseason with like okay defenses are the Bucks. We're going to be seeing the Cowboys and possibly the Eagles because they're imploding right now defensively. And the Rams, their defense isn't that good. So once we start getting around to the guys that actually matter on the AFC, is Brock ready to see? The way I look at it is Brock ready to see Cleveland, Baltimore, or Kansas City. At this stage of the game, we pretty much know what we're going to get now, right? Like we're down to the last two games of the season. So the real question isn't, is Brock, thank God we don't see the Ravens again. We dodged that bullet. Like, no, we're kind of running out of road right now. We're going to run into this again.
But I mean, run or pass, the Niners have an MVP candidate that they can lean on. So it doesn't really matter whether you run it or pass it. Just go try to beat your opponent. And if your opponent's really good in a certain area, then go in a different direction. And to me, that was when I saw that the Ravens were dead last in that category for a team that's really one of the best defenses in football, that just stood out like a sore thumb. I guarantee you they're not dead last in anything else. So
you know what they do though, and this is kind of their game plan a little bit, Larry, is they play a lot of too high safety. And one of the things that we talked about last week is that they are great once you get in the red zone. And so that's what was happening. I mean, that happened the very first drive that played out. 49ers drove right down the field, got in the red zone, boom. They forced a turnover. That's what they do. That's Baltimore's season in a nutshell. They've been killing people. Well, you'll get to the red zone, but once you're there, you ain't scoring. Like once that field's condensed, it's us. We're going to stop you. That's what they've been doing all season long. And so, yeah, they almost dare you or bait you to run. But once you get in the red zone, good luck scoring touchdowns. It's just not going to happen very often.
Well, and they're so big on the defensive line. I mean, I saw this 3-4 weeks before the matchup, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Pierce is 358 and Travis Jones is 335. And I'm like, my goodness, they
got some boys up front, man.
Yeah, and then
they can run.
So that's up front. And then you got Roquan and Queen, who we know are as fast as any inside linebacker duo in the game, including Greenlaw and Warner.
Yep.
And then you've got really active, physical, good-sized corners and DBs that are blue chippers. Humphrey was
Great
a first.
tacklers.
Hamilton was a first. Even Darby is a good player. So, I mean, they're a good team. But I thought,
and let's not, and they're big. Brandon Stevens had a day, 6'1".
Stevens has been their best corner this year. Unbelievable.
He's 6'1", 215. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's a real body on the edge that we don't see week in and week out, right?
Yeah.
Like,
they get good size.
Tackle. Yeah, these guys, usually I see what Kyle likes to do. We beat up on secondaries, man. We beat up on secondaries and we expose linebackers. That's what our offense does. We engineer around facing defensive lines up front. That's kind of like what we do. But we struggle with teams that are pretty much stout from top to bottom, where they don't mind having a corner out on the island because he's strong enough to break through on the screen. Like I said, first play, Christian gets that now route in the flat to the screen from Brock Purdy. And when I saw Kyle Hamilton just envelop Christian, that's when, and nobody was around him. They had the confidence that he was going to make that play. They weren't swarming over there to go rush to get on top of Christian McCaffrey. They saw him close on him while everybody else was still in their spot on the field. That, to me, that's when I knew we were going to have a long day. I said, dude, these dudes are sound. Like they're waiting on this stuff. And, we're going to have to play against some teams where, we're going to have Debo blocking without the ball. It's a lot, man, that happened on this team where when I talk about us not being a tough team, they play like they know where the ball is going with these plays. They expect defense to make these mistakes week in and week out because Kyle tells them that these plays are going to work. And you could see these dudes on film where everybody ain't playing hard. I know I sound like a curmudgeon, but the film don't lie, man. Everybody ain't playing hard. And they played against a team that they look at that film too. And they see, man, these dudes are running with smokes and mirrors, man. Brock is processing. He's getting the ball out. But these dudes are doing line dancing. They're running to a script. But let's see them play off script. Let's see them play from behind. Let's see them play when these plays ain't going off and you got to run what you know that we know you're running. Like, when's the last time we seen the Niners have a game like in 2019? Any game where it's like they're running left, we're running left, buckle up, we're going. We're running right, we're running right, buckle up, let's go. We don't have that team. We got to fool motherfuckers, man.
I think we're overreacting, to be completely honest. There's only 11 possessions in this game. There were 5 interceptions and 100 yards of penalties. Everything else beyond that, I mean, that's really what happened in this game. 49ers did a lot of good things. They passed the ball and had some success. They ran the ball and had some success. Jesse's right. The Ravens bent but didn't break in the red zone, and that the numbers told us that's what was going to happen. But I thought overall, I mean, like there's some games you lose and you're like, oh man, I hope we don't run into that team again. I didn't walk out of there going, oh man, don't want to see the Ravens again. I don't fear the Ravens next time around. Odds are they're not going to be +5 in turnovers. And it was a bad day. It was a definite bad day. It was a bad day for Shanahan. It was a bad day for the Niner receivers. It was a bad day for the bounce of the ball. It was a bad day for Brock Purdy. It was a bad day for Nick Bosa. It was a bad day for the 49ers for Chase Young. It was a bad day for Chase Young. So, I mean, it was just they didn't and I'm not saying they didn't take the Ravens seriously, because I think they did. Heck, I've seen 3 or 4 different guys I talked to in the locker room in the last 2 days who were like, man, it was so disappointing to lose that game because we really, really wanted it. Really wanted it. But, the Ravens came in icy. And in that situation, if I could choose to do it again, I've only seen the Niners guys in my life play twice on Christmas. And both times they were good teams going against teams that were real physical. One year it was 93 against the Oilers. And you know what? They got outplayed and out-toughed, I thought, in both of the games on Christmas. So it was a weird vibe. I'll say this. It was a weird vibe in the stadium. It was like a lot of glee, a lot of happiness, and I don't know, glee and happiness. I thought the Ravens had more of an edge. They had more of an anger. They had more of a intense focus. And I think if I was going to play on Christmas, would I rather be at home or on the road? Man, I'd much rather be on the road. I don't want to sit there and try to be, kissy face with wife and kids and gifts and family and people waiting at the house and all the, and then try to turn it on and play a real tough game. And then, they were on a road trip. They were on a mission. They came in sober and tough and ready. And the Niners looked a little bit of like they were serving multiple masters. Hey, we're family guys over here. Hey, we're football players over here. It was not. It didn't have a good vibe. It really didn't, even in the pregame.
Kyle Shanahan made him stay at the team hotel the night before, trying to avoid that. So I think he sees what you saw. Daza says, why does Kyle go away from the plays when they're working? Just keep using it till the opponents adjust.
I agree.
Matt says, 49ers are the only team to believe their own hype. Matthew Sanders says, I don't know how, but we need to feed BA. He elevates Purdy. I agree, man. He's a matchup nightmare.
Has he even been stopped much this year that you guys can think of where you really felt like, man, that corner had his number?
No.
I haven't felt that way all year.
No. I'm thinking.
Matt says, no, I don't think so. Matt says, being a bully is okay till you get punched. Keith says, then last 3 to 4 years, our identity has been winning those grimy games. It's kind of weird. What happened? It's a good point. They kind of were the grimy team. Like that, the 2019 Saints, right? Like we all remember that. Fantasy says, we forget that at half with all that happened, it was a 4-point game. Football is a week-to-week sport. Learn from this and get better and move on. Joey Mellon says, have y'all looked at Ayuk and why he wasn't targeted in the first half? Did Baltimore lock him down? That's what you were asking earlier, Joey. No, I think that they found a matchup in Kittle that they liked, and I felt like they force-fed it to Debo a little bit as well. Brand New says Lamar, Debo, and CMC could be the equivalent to the 2012 Miami Heat. Oh, I don't know if I like that. Jeeves says Kyle's offense operates like a choreographed symphony. It's impressive to watch, but what's missing is guys being encouraged to just line up and win. I know he's speaking to your heart there, Coach.
Yeah, it's just there's a difference between being a good player and being a winner. There's a difference. You know what I mean? Like there's guys that are awesome players. Like I was having a conversation with a friend, it's like, look at Russ, man. Like Russ was breaking records, like putting up triple doubles year after year. But as soon as he got with a winning organization, he tanked. He's not a winner. He doesn't know how to win. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, that's the thing that I'm looking for from our team now. It's like, all right, enough with the parlor tricks. We know you know how to run up and front run and get a good lead on somebody and close out. But can you win when we're all wondering, like, all right, like, this is a good team. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is somebody who's not going to go away. In the moments of being a champion, can you win? And that's the deciding factor with how I feel about this team, is that I'm waiting to like stop looking at them with a skeptical eye, but they make me look at them that way because it's like they have so much bravado and so much confidence in themselves, but they ain't won shit. They haven't won. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I haven't heard anybody say that yet, right? Where it's like, you know what? For where we're trying to go right now, yesterday was horrible, especially with us trying to go get the number 1 seed. But what do we get? We get gaslit. Oh, number 1 seed doesn't matter that much. Oh, you know what I'm saying? Oh, you know, some of these picks weren't Brock's fault. They were, you know, getting caught up in the weeds, trying to be experts, all of this stupid shit. And it's like, no, you got your ass whooped. Like, deal with that. Don't try to explain it away. That's like you getting caught cheating on your wife and you're like, honey, well, first of all, I met her at the supermarket and I was really upset that day. And it's like, no, like, you fucked up. Deal with the blunder. Deal with the issue. You lost and you got embarrassed on a team that you saw coming. Let's deal with that. You saw them coming. They didn't sneak up on you. You knew what was at stake. And when we couldn't roll the ball out, you wanted to get an MVP instead of winning the game.
I love that. That was great. Matt says, critique Purdy being a second-year quarterback or an MVP caliber quarterback. I mean, I think the fact that was in the MVP conversation was pretty amazing for a second-year quarterback. I think both can be true, but also, I mean, you got to critique him like he's an elite quarterback because that's what we were told, right? He says, I guess I'm a big Lamar fan, and outside of the Niners, I watch him a lot. It's not one of the best games that he's had. I guess I'm comparing him to his best. That's fair. I mean, he wasn't like electric Lamar. I know what you're talking about, but he definitely was a difference maker. I mean, we talked about the running play, but Larry, I know that you'll remember this one when he rolled out right and put Greenlaw in conflict and then hit Edwards right behind him, and Edwards ran for like 30 something yards right after. Like, come on, man. That was all Lamar. All Lamar.
I thought it was one of Lamar's best games because Lamar's weapons in this game, he didn't have Keaton Mitchell. He didn't have J.K. Dobbins. He didn't have good running backs. And he didn't have Andrews. I mean, seriously, I mean, this was an incredible performance when you really think about it, on the road against a team the caliber of the 49ers without all your weapons. I mean, could you imagine if Purdy went into Baltimore and beat them with no Debo, no CMC, and no Kittle? I mean, it was it wasn't statistically his greatest performance, but I mean, if you watched the game, I mean, he never was hurried. He made plays with his legs. He was efficient. He was smart with the ball. I thought he was really, really strong.
Well, and people critique him for not being a passer, right? A good passer, a good quarterback. He dropped back how many times that game? I mean,
35.
He won by throwing the football, which is what people think he can't do for some reason. So I agree to a certain extent. I mean, it was definitely a great performance. Flav, but I just don't think the electricity of Lamar doing some Lamar thing. I get what he's saying, but I do. I think it was a good performance for sure. Flav says, in theory, Lamar and Kyle Shanahan's system would be good, but with Kyle Shanahan and all this talent, it rarely necessarily to go off schedule. An elite distributor is all we need, and think it's more Purdy than Lamar.
I agree with that. I'm like, if you think about it, you know how like Kyle lied to us and told us that he basically wanted like this bionic quarterback. Like,
they have him. They have him. Have you not read it? Told us. You didn't. Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad. Go ahead.
Sheets. Shouts out to Sheets. But what I was saying is like Kyle kind of like talked about like, you know, when he got up there and basically tried to like big time us and talk about what he wants as a quarterback, because you need elite speed and you want somebody with the arm of Drew Brees and the legs of Josh Allen and the body of Ben-Hur or whatever the fuck. And to be honest with you, he needs a processor. He needs somebody that can get the ball out extremely accurate. He needs somebody that can stand in the pocket when they know they're going to get hit, because he puts them on 7-step drops from under center still, because that's what he cares about. He needs somebody that's going to process and be on time with his offense and throw the passes that they need to make, even though the progressions are not what they've traditionally learned. He needs somebody that is already developed, okay, that already has the reps under them, so he doesn't have to waste time working on their mechanics, and he could just pump his scheme into their brain. That's what Kyle needs. That's the most success he's had with those types of quarterbacks. He's had athletic quarterbacks, and he's gotten them hurt. He had the number 2 overall quarterback in 2012, got him hurt. He had the number 3 overall quarterback in 2021, got him hurt. The most success that he's had is Mr. Irrelevant. So, I mean, let's stop trying to put 20 on 10 and acting like we need a Lamar. I would like Lamar, but to be honest with you, I don't think Kyle could coach Lamar. I think that Kyle would coach all of that stuff that we say is beautiful about Lamar out of him. You see how John Harbaugh talks to Lamar, how he leaves open spaces of the game for Lamar to be creative and take over the team? That's not Kyle. That's not his motive. That's not his modus operandi at all. You think that Kyle's going to ever get to the point where he looks at Brock and says, hey, man, whatever you want to do on this play, it's up to you. Hey, man, you tell me what you want to run this time. No, that ain't happening. So I kind of feel like we can look at the genius of what this team brings offensively, but there is a bit of a glass ceiling on the true progression of what our team is going to be offensively, because our head coach is our OC.
Ooh, what do you think about that, Larry?
Well, first of all, he didn't. I mean, it's not like he ruined RG3, because RG3 never hasn't done anything after that, and he didn't ruin Trey, because it's not like Trey's gone to Dallas and been awesome. He may have picked the wrong guys.
If they get hurt under Kyle and they never do anything after that, that would constitute that he got them hurt, right? Wouldn't that be like?
I don't know if he got them hurt. I mean, that sounds so nefarious, doesn't it? It sounds like he intentionally got them hurt. He didn't intentionally got them hurt. They got hurt. But I mean, it's like Trey Lance has been healthy for a long time. He's still not playing at all. And when RG3 eventually got healthy, he never played again. I mean, so I don't know that those guys are awesome, but for Kyle, that's all I'm saying.
Do you think if Josh Allen was drafted here, I think this is a fair question. If Josh Allen had been drafted here, knowing what Josh Allen needed to become Josh Allen, we know it took a couple years of development, right? Had all the physical traits. Do you think if Josh Allen was drafted here that he would have panned out under Kyle Shanahan? Do you think he'd be Josh Allen under Kyle Shanahan?
I do. I mean, I think in some ways he'd be better, in some ways he'd be worse, but I think he's still relatively inconsistent. Heck, I watched Josh Allen turn the ball over a ton this year and, look really bad. So it's I think Josh, and that's what I saw at Wyoming, by the way. I saw a guy that looked awesome and then terrible and then awesome and then terrible. So I just think that Josh Allen is there's some huge inconsistency in his game. I don't think if Kyle drafted him, he would have been like some bomb washed out of the league. No, I think he would have been pretty good. As far as good, that's hard to say. I
mean, Josh Allen, for all intents and purposes, we can talk about him being up and down, but at worst, he's a top 5 quarterback in the league. At best, you've got him in your top 2.
Yeah, but he's had some really, really bad games this year.
For sure. But he's also going to lead the league in touchdowns again.
Yeah. He probably would have piled up a bunch of touchdowns under Kyle, probably.
Yeah, maybe. Great show, guys. Paul says, look forward to Thursday night every week. Appreciate
that. Glad to hear that.
D Dizzle says, we can beat anyone. My concerns is that the Browns, Bills, Chiefs, Ravens, and Rams got to get dirty. No Santa Clara-ish. All right, fair. DP. The good thing is that out of those teams you listed and out of the teams that we talk about being problems, the 49ers likely only have to beat one of them. Most of those teams are in the AFC. Nothing changed on Monday night about their path through the NFC. They are still the team to beat in the NFC. Now, once they get there, you've got one game that you got to win against a team that's probably going to give you a lot of troubles. Doesn't mean you can't win, but it's just one game. If they had to start in the AFC and go through 2 or 3 of those teams, I don't know that I would like that path. But one of them, I feel pretty good about that. DP says playing this way because this shit don't matter. You'll send playoff.
Cincinnati playoff, Super Bowl, AFC. So come on, man.
I don't know.
You can't
laughed when I said Kyle and Brock are trying to
Try and
fit
shit
out, but you'll see it will be a domination. Write it down. Bro, I don't
just
know.
pay the $19.99 and give all the just say what you need to say.
I don't know what
Like,
you just said, man.
You could tell he was like, damn, all right, I'm already at $9.99. Fuck, I gotta shorten this up. Yeah.
Next time, spend an extra $1 and buy yourself some punctuation.
Yeah, come on,
There
man.
you
Like,
go.
spend the $19.99.
Excuse me, Vanna White. I'd like to buy a fucking vowel.
Goodness.
Frank Tom Ocean says, sign this trio, keep crushing it, gents, go 49ers. I knew what you meant, essentially, Frank Tom Ocean. I appreciate you. Keith says, diva weapon, pit receiver, that wouldn't block. Yes.
George Pickens.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go. There's your diva receiver. Dazza says, we've been talking about the O-line for years. It's almost the Niners
front office spite at
the stage. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it has been a thing we've been talking about
let's
for
be
years.
honest about this too. That we know the way this goes. The Niners talk about their O-line. They live with second-tier offensive linemen and offensive line production. And then by the time we get to April, it's a defensive tackle.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's
You know?
true. God
It's like
damn it.
they're going to do it again. It's going to
I hate you, Larry.
It's
I
like
hate
all
you
of
for
a
that.
sudden, we're going to talk about, this guy and that guy. And then it's going to be the Niners select Chris Jenkins, University of Michigan, defensive tackle.
And then we're gonna get 10 cents a day linemen off the fucking undrafted free agent heap. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna get Smithson from fucking St. Valley Bubblefuck State. Oh, he's a good one. Look at his film.
I'll say this, and I believe this in all sports. You draft
3-286.
You draft the positions
but he's a tough son of a gun.
You draft who you value. You draft who and what you value. The Niners value defensive linemen, and they draft defensive linemen. That's
and third-round running backs that they're going to get rid of in 2 years. Ryan says, did you know if the 49ers beat the Rams, they'll be the first team in the NFL to ever sweep their division 2 years in a row. The last team to come close was the 85-86 Bears. I did not know that. Are you
telling me all those years when the Niners were in the NFC West and dominating, and they played in a division with the Rams, the Saints, and the Falcons, that they didn't
probably
have a couple
not
years in a row where they
because those were five-team divisions, were they not? So you're talking about two extra games.
The Niners were in a 4-team division. It was Saints, Falcons, Rams, and Niners. And the Niners.
What about
awesome.
when they added Carolina though?
Yeah, that wasn't 95, 90. Yeah, 95.
I guess I was thinking around
that was the end of the run. I mean, by 81 through 94.
I feel like the Saints kind of gave them some fits there back then, though, for some reason. I don't know why.
The Falcons upset them a few times for sure.
Yeah. That's kind of crazy, though. That is a crazy stat. I'm going to have to look that one up to confirm it. I believe you.
All those Brady years, they never in that.
No, they were
AFC
they couldn't win in Miami. Remember?
No,
they could not win in Miami. They had like a 7-year losing streak in Miami or something crazy like that.
I remember that.
Brother Bob says, as I've said before, that's the problem with our draft. Lance, Sermon, TDP, etc. We wasted picks that could have been O-line. Kyle Shanahan does not prioritize O-line. Yeah, that's pretty much what Larry just said. It's almost like you guys could be friends if you weren't here. Raziki says,
more you know.
Raziki says, Coach, how do you feel about Larry taking the title of sexiest backdrop from you? The lighting, the logo, the wood paneling? Nice.
All right, so look. God damn it. Yes, it's very nice. And I do look like the only reason why I have this light is because if I don't, I'm going to look like I'm in an Al-Qaeda suicide video. And it's going to look like this white wall back here.
That's what Vish does.
Yeah, it's going to look crazy as shit. So I have the light. I got to get a sign. I just don't know what I'm going to get because a sign is kind of like, dedicate. You're in it now. Once you get a sign, you're kind of like you're blooded in. So I do need to get a sign, But I got the light because just the white wall, it looked like I was just snuck in here and recorded. It didn't even look like I lived here. Like it was just getting pretty bad. So Larry has upped the ante with the porn light. And Jesse, I see yours too. I got to get my porn light too. So I'm coming. And then we can boom chicka wow, all three of us.
Are you saying that? All right. Well, listen, I was going to say something, but after what you said, it's just not going to go well together. So I'm going to not say that. But that's where Vish has gone. I mean, Vish has been in jail. We knew that by his background. He's been in the hole for the last 30 days. So he'll be back soon. Brother Bob says, Jesse, you're right. That's why PP realized why Lamar is MVP and CMC is the real Niners MVP. Niners fan wanting number 6. If Purdy's the MVP, you love putting the ball in his hands. Keith Murphy says, in 2019, we used Brenda Coleman or Brenda. Yeah. Breda. Yeah. I was like, Brenda. Breda, Coleman, and Mostert. Why don't we run more running backs? I think these 3 are talented. I understand CMC getting the majority, but nobody else. Brother, we've been talking about it all season. It ain't going to change. All right. It's not, unless for some reason he's just got this whole plan to rest Mitchell and unleash him in the playoffs. I doubt it.
He's not playing.
Matthew Sanders says the Rams power Kyron and then play action nearly beat Baltimore. They also have an elite quarterback. And one thing that I talked about coming into this game about the Ravens is as much as the 49ers confuse people on offense, Baltimore does the same thing on defense. You can't confuse somebody like Stafford. He's seen everything that you can throw at a quarterback. He's not going to get confused easily. That was a big difference. And Hamilton missed a big chunk of that game.
Yeah.
Those things both play.
Stafford in that game, 23 of 41 for 294, 3 touchdowns, no picks.
Mm-hmm.
Kyron ran for 114 yards. Rams ran for 4-3 a carry.
Mm-hmm.
Cooper Kupp had a 100-yard day. Puka had 84-yard day. Even Davis Allen had a big day in that one. So,
yep. DP says, why should change everything? Wow, guys, you guys, why should change everything?
He doesn't go.
He does against the best AFC defenses because those 2 are the best practice in season games that you can get. They don't matter practice. I mean, every game matters, man. I mean, if they had won one of those games, they'd have the number 1 seed locked up at this point, basically. Like, they definitely matter. 49er George, and you're giving those teams confidence if they play you again. 49er George 365 Fire Stream. Thanks, man. I appreciate you. Brother Bob says, stop making excuses. BP sucked. We got stomped at home. I don't think
you got stomped.
Made excuses.
The Niners had by almost 100 more total yards. So
we went over this when we first started the show, Larry. Let's not lock horns now. We got an hour 52.
We're talking about 100 yards. Don't say somebody got stomped when they had 100 more yards than you.
Yeah, but like 160 of those came in the fourth quarter with Sam Darnold or something, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, they had like a 12-play, 90-play. They had like a 12-play, 90-yard drive and another like 6-play, 42-yard drive.
The Niners did an awful lot in that game offensively. They just turned it over. They moved the ball. They turned it over.
Torta Monster says first pick was mainly Kittle's fault for the lazy route.
It was Debo who was running the route. If anything, Brock led him too much into the middle of the field. If he had put it over his left shoulder, he probably could have caught that and took a hit from Hamilton. He led him to the middle of the field because I don't think he ever saw Hamilton because I don't think he knew what coverage he was staring at there. He got too aggressive. It was clearly on Brock. It was a huge mistake, and it wound up being pivotal.
He then says this team will lose if they only use CMC. He punishes no one physically. Mason needs to be fed. I do agree with that.
I agree with that.
They need to use
I agree with that. Like I just feel like it'll give them another element of physicality, and it'll keep people tethered to the line of scrimmage so Brock can start making more passes deeper down the field. Like they need to get tougher up front, man. And if you can't engineer that, I mean, if you can't purely get that out of your offensive line, which, you know, we're beating a dead horse. I feel like I'm kind of where Larry is, you know, whatever.
I mean, it's crazy to have this talented of a power back at a spot where you've used a committee in the past and he's got how many carries does the guy have all year? 10?
I'm about to look. I mean, it's just
I mean,
I don't know, man.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. You would swear that that they could lose him at the end of the year if they didn't protect him or something, and they were trying to keep him quiet. It reminds me of like what teams do sometimes when they have a player they really like in training camp that they want to squeeze through the practice squad. This guy's on the team.
I don't get it.
And the ball.
Yeah, and he's not in like any doghouse capacity. He's around for special teams, like he's practicing. I just don't understand.
Got the ball. He looked. Really
I don't understand
energetic.
why they don't value him. I don't get it. You know, are they truly waiting for the playoffs? Like, I don't understand. And then, you know, shoot. Now that Elijah, I don't even know when's the last time I seen Elijah Mitchell. Like, when's the last time he even played?
He's been hurt.
So he's probably going to go this week.
Yeah.
You know, it's just
he's always hurt, man. He can't. That kid can't catch a break.
He's the new Jalen Hurd. It's like Kyle gets like these 10 cent a day injured players that he just can't let go of. And in the eyes of an angel starts playing in the background and he starts getting all sentimental. He did it with Jalen Hurd. He did it with Jerick McKinnon. He did it with Trent Taylor. He did it like, come on, man. Like he does this, you know, he just gets these guys where injuries don't seem to matter. It's just what he thinks he can get out of them. And they actually don't do anything, but Kyle thinks they do. And that's what matters.
Brother Bob says, haha, now PP's praising BA. Backpedaling?
Praised him all year, bro.
I'm not reading.
You guys got to get like a
Bob.
celebrity boxing match, like 3 2-minute rounds. Like just get it over with.
Bring it.
This is a good one. Your math bestie.
I'm with the bullshit. Let's get a boxing match going, Bob. You game? You've been sending super chats for months. It's time to strap them up.
And also, I'm the only person who ever has to hang with that. I said I was disappointed at week 8 that Brandon Ayuk had 2 touchdowns, and that's all. That was my point. That was the entirety of the point. And you're going to try to say that I've been bagging the guy. I've been bagging the guy. I was the guy. There's like 19 videos of me in August saying Brandon Ayuk's going to have a career year. I think Brandon Ayuk's going off. I just thought Brandon Ayuk was going to have a touchdown season like McCaffrey is having. And instead, we got to the halfway mark and he had 2. And that was a ridiculous low total based on what I saw this summer. And so I said it. And I don't take it back.
Your math bestie.
Right now, he's at 1,200 yards, though. He's well past. I mean, he barely eked over 1,000 last year. We got 2 games left, and he's at 1,200
You're talking yards. I was talking touchdowns, and he was on pace halfway through the season for 4.
Okay.
That's what I was talking about.
I'll give you that.
Yeah, the argument was we tried to make the yards argument. He was talking touchdowns.
You were talking touchdowns.
I remember the whole thing.
Your math bestie.
Your math bestie says if linebackers and safeties clog up the middle, how is Purdy gonna break through that?
Oh, run game.
I think he's taking your comment about their good safeties and linebackers and clogging up the middle, Larry. I think that's a question for you.
Well, and that's why this game against the Commanders, in my mind, is really interesting. Now, Brock can say, hey, the plays were there. Kyle can say that, it was just the turnovers. But the Ravens put it on film that if you study Brock's tendencies and you blitz him off the edge and drop extra bodies into the middle of the field, that you can shrink those windows, anticipate the windows he's throwing in, put a lot of, shrink them down and get your hands on a lot of footballs. And they did. Now, what's the counter? And how do the Niners counter that? And can they counter that? Or is it just going to be a parade of blitzes off the edge and all kinds of defenders in the middle of the field? And Brock's going to have to throw corner routes. But they didn't seem like they felt like it was a problem. We're going to find out Sunday against the Commanders.
I don't think we are going to find out. I don't think the Commanders can do squat about it. I think the Commanders can try to deploy whatever the hell they want. and it's not going to look anything like it did with the Ravens. Like they don't have the horses, so I don't. There's nothing that's going to come out of this game if they ran this same exact scheme and then the 49ers boat race them. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, they figured it out. I guess we're good now. I'm not. No, hell no.
No, but I mean, look at what the Commanders do have. They got Kaliki Hudson and Cody Barton. Those guys are not super stout, but I think Hudson's a former DB, isn't he? Barton's kind of a runner. Cam Curl's a decent safety.
Cam Curl's a dog.
We'll see. We'll see what they look like. I'm interested to see what this defensive alignment looks like. And do we see the 49ers with more condensed formations? Do we see more corner blitzes? But you're right. The Ravens had a great plan, but they also had the personnel. They've got truly great players in the middle of the field.
Mm-hmm. That's the difference is, the players, the personnel, right? What do we talk about every time we talk about our team? We talk about the personnel. And Kyle finds a way to get that mismatch, right? Where Debo on a linebacker that's not fast enough is a problem. Where Brandon Ayuk on a corner that ain't big enough is a problem. George Kittle on a safety that's too slow or not physical enough is a problem. And Kyle finds these ways how to get to this stuff through scheme. But once you kind of take that element away from it, and it's all about just honest ball, where we're playing hat on a hat football, this is best on best football, then you can almost kind of hurt yourself trying to put scheme in the way, because you really want your boys to play free. And that's my biggest thing is how do the guys play free? How do the guys get into the best parts of the offense where they know exactly what they're doing and they got confidence that this shit works, right? Like when we're down by 3, like think about this, Larry. We're down by 1 point and we've thrown 3 picks against the number 1 defense in the league. That right there, let's just stop before the game goes any second further. That right there is an anomaly. 3 picks versus
it showed that the defense, even though they were put in bad spots, is still rose up. They still rose up.
Yeah. And that's my point is like, as a coach, why doesn't Kyle start understanding I got to protect my defense now? These guys are basically, they're good for 4 quarters. I've basically gotten 3 quarters of effort out of them in a half. Okay.
I agree. Running the ball would also be complementary football and it would help.
Yeah. If the Niner defense. We've been saying this all year. Yeah, we play complementary football. That wasn't complementary. Continuously throwing picks. Then after the 3rd pick, you throw the ball. You come out, you run to the wrong side where everybody knows you run to the right side with Christian, and then you throw the ball multiple times and get another pick. That's not complimentary. That's my main issue. My main issue is that at what point does Kyle start realizing I got to protect my defense here? We've thrown the ball. Like, for what it's worth, football's a team sport, but Larry, you know how it is on the sidelines. It's very much offense versus defense. It's like, you guys got what y'all doing. We got what we're doing. But when offense is continuously kicking defense on the field, shit gets a little cantankerous on the sidelines. Like, what are y'all doing over there? How much can we take? Right.
Plus, or let's be honest. I mean, an offensive line that is not great. I'd rather my offensive line be rolling downhill, looking for guys to hit, and not backpedaling and absorbing, people rushing the quarterback.
From your lips to God's ears, Larry.
Run the ball. Run
as
the ball.
As an offensive lineman, dog, when we have a game, I don't care what coach plan, what game plan I came up with, what I coached up, my coaching points all year. Man, after the first series, everybody knows that the first thing coaches are saying after the first series on a half at a football game is what? How do they feel? Are they what they said they are? Are they what we said they were? Are they physical up front? How tough are they? You don't do that going 5 wide, throwing the ball 6 times in a row. This was about Kyle's scheme. This wasn't about him. If I was an offensive lineman and we're running the ball, I looked at the game plan. I'm like, dude, are we scared of these dudes? Why are we running 6 plays in a row passing? When are we going to get a chance to even break a sweat on these dudes? So you mean to tell me that we get to play against the number 1 defense in the league, and my first drive, I'm on my heels? I'm on my heels the first drive. So we're sitting here passing the ball. We're not even dictating to these guys, right? I can't even tell you what these guys are like up front because you've already kind of like shit the bed. You've spit the bit. Let us know that we're not as physical as them, and this is my game plan. This was on Kyle. It really was. Like we didn't even lean on the run game when the game was in. All right, look, even if we open up the run game passing, open up the game passing, cool. You don't change your mind after 3 picks with the leading rusher in the league and say, all right, bro, we got to slow it down. 4 picks in, we're at least, if we lose this game, we're not going to lose this game without Christian McCaffrey having at least 25 carries. Full stop.
I wonder too. I wonder, about the Niner mindset and Kyle's mindset for winning this game at all costs. This game didn't decide the season, and they just didn't look like they like the fact. I think Purdy would have came back if this had been a win or go home game. I think they probably would have ran the ball a bit more. It just seemed like they know that they've got more miles to go, and self-preservation of McCaffrey and Purdy probably creeped into the mindset of Shanahan at some point, and probably hurt their chances to win.
J49 Hamilton practiced today, so I don't know. I don't think he's out for long. Keith Murphy, the unbeaten, says it was Mayweather's version of Lamar versus Tyson. Nice. Daza says we drafted Latu over several potentially useful linemen, and why draft running backs 3rd round when we don't even play Mason and cut these 3rd round running backs?
Facts.
The one draft choice that I really think about when I watched all the players this year,
DeJuan
Jones.
The
Cleveland monstrous tackle.
And when you saw what he did to Nick is what made it sting.
Yeah,
when you saw the game he had against Nick Bosa, that's what made it sting. We missed.
And when
him.
you're 6'8", 375, you don't need to be just absolute perfect, and you can engulf. Just the size of that player is going to give opposing defensive ends problems. And I thought he played well. And you took Cam Latu, who
he's not even around. And I'm a Cam Latu guy, but not anymore, bro. Like, his service is rendered.
He just had an awful camp.
He would have been cut if he didn't get injured. And actually, we all thought that, Larry. And Lynch confirmed it. He said, well, he didn't make the team, but he's injured. So I guess, he'll be around. Like, oh, okay. So basically you're saying you would have cut him if he was healthy. Fantastic. Balla Vision says, Larry, yards don't matter. Check the scoreboard. We got knocked the F out. Kyle Span CMC all season just to switch up on the biggest game of the year. This super is for Coach 100.
Thanks, man. I mean, I don't understand. How when we first started the season and we were 5-0, and this is like when we were looking so good, it was kind of like, dude, who's gonna beat us, right? And at that point, we were kind of like asking. We were even more leaning towards the team, being offensively led. You know what I mean? Like, dude, are we kind of like an offensive team now? Like, is this what we're doing? And what was even shocking about it was how much, Larry, how many Saturday shows, bro, did me and you sit up here and talk about the uses of Christian McCaffrey? Like, he's being
I asked Kyle directly the question. I said, hey, he's on pace for 400 touches. Is that sustainable? And he's like, well, he's our running back, and we like to hand it to him, and we like to throw it. We like to throw him the ball. It's like, I get it. But, I mean, is he going to be upright come playoff time? And, I'll say this. He's upright, and there's only 2 games to go. But, man, to me, if you said, are the Niners going to win the Super Bowl, I would feel so much better if they could go into the playoffs with a healthy Greenlaw and a healthy Armstead and a healthy CMC. And those were the 3 players, and Trent, obviously. But, I mean, those 3 or 4 players they had to have healthy. And it just seemed like they took an awful big risk with their usage at running back. And I don't get it. I would get it if you had nobody else. But since you have other options, I don't get it. So we'll see. Maybe it won't burn him. CMC's been great. He's had an MVP type year, but all it's going to matter is what he looks like in the playoffs. So we'll see.
Dazza says Ayuk has had 10 targets once this whole year. Meanwhile, Debo just got 14. Brother Bob says, Coach, I told PP to meet me at the LA game. He flaked. All right, guys, listen. I'm
He
not
already
setting
muted you
up
for
a-
this. He called you
I'm
out
not
for the
setting up
fade
a
already.
fight on the
If-
freaking stream
If
here.
if I said I was going and
He's my
didn't
dad.
go,
I
that would be
did.
flaking. I never said I was going. I would have liked it.
Jiminy Christmas. Jay Figura says, Kyle, run the damn ball. Period.
Yeah.
All right. Matthew Sanders says, Coach, you're right about keeping their D on the field after multiple interceptions, but how are we supposed to? It's not like we have the best running back in the NFL. Oh, wait.
Oh, wait.
Oh, yeah.
Brother Bob says, Kyle Shanahan was trying to get BP the MVP like he was CMC before. Rolls his eyes. Ah, man, you guys killed it with the super chats tonight. Oh, here we go. Matthew says, don't worry, Larry. CMC is pulling home that Super Bowl MVP. Hey, man, I don't care. If we get 6, you can put a statue out in front of all the players on this team for all I care. Just get number 6, damn it. Larry, Coach, as always, thank you for another fantastic Thursday show. Everybody
Awesome,
in the
man.
chat, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you so much for the super chats. You guys have a blessed weekend. And listen, we get through Washington. This game is pretty much it. And then it is playoff football from here on out. We're playing the Rams team that is very formidable. We'll see if they get the bye. And then after that, man, we're here. This is the part of the season we've been waiting for.
Clinch the 1
Yes.
seed this weekend with a win over Washington.
Not just a win. They would need help. They would need Dallas.
What are we?
They would
rooting
need
for?
Dallas to beat Detroit
Dallas has to
and
beat Detroit.
Arizona to beat Philly.
Okay. Okay.
I don't think either of those are out of the realm of possibility. Dallas
Not
is at
out of
home.
Dallas has to beat. Wait. Say that again.
Dallas is at home
Against
Detroit. If they beat Detroit,
right,
which I think is likely,
Yeah.
then that helps us. And then if Arizona beats Philly, and I think it's in Arizona and Philly, we know, I mean, they can be
Philly
had.
is looking a little weird.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So Arizona beats Philly in Arizona, and this is Gannon against his former team. So it's not like he's got no skin in the game in this. He's got plenty of skin in the game. That would be interesting. I don't believe in Arizona, but who knows?
Nah, they got a run game though.
Domain says he's in Philly. Well, I mean, it's in Philly.
It's
Okay,
in
okay.
Philly,
So that
yeah.
game's in Philly. Okay, okay. I assumed it was in Arizona because they were just at home. So that's what you get for assuming. There you go. But I think both those are possible, guys. I really do. And I look at the Giants as well. I know that's not till week 17, but the Giants just gave Philly all that they could handle.
Can
They
I ask
might
you guys?
beat them in week 17.
Can I ask you guys one question before we end this?
Yeah.
Who, as we're sitting here on the 28th of December, if we're sitting in a casino and you had to wager on the Super Bowl, who would you wager to be there? Not necessarily who would win, but who would you wager to be there on the 28th of December?
I mean, I think it would have to be the two teams that just played on Christmas, right?
Literally, us in Baltimore.
Okay.
I mean, like the only team in the AFC that I could possibly see giving Baltimore like issues is a team that's possibly built like them, and that would be the Bills. If Josh Allen just turned it on and took over a game.
So you believe in Cleveland, but you don't believe in Cleveland enough to get out of the AFC.
No, not getting past Baltimore,
Too many injuries,
Kansas
man.
City, or Buffalo. Baltimore, Kansas City, and Buffalo. I don't think that the Browns, they'll get got by one of them, but I think they'll take one with them before they go.
Ravens 7-1 on the road. Pretty damn good.
Their defense is actually better on the road. I will say this though. I do have a weird gut feeling that Buffalo is going to be there. I don't know why. I had a feeling that they were going to win the division 4 weeks ago. Looking at how things could play out, now the Ravens would have to beat Miami this week in order for that to happen. But I don't know. Sometimes teams get hot at the right time. We've seen it. Weird things happen. The Giants back in the day twice. Green Bay was a team that's done it a couple times themselves where they got hot at the right time. Sometimes just the team that gets hot rides all the way to the Super Bowl. And I just feel like Buffalo right now could be that team, man.
Maybe Cleveland. So Razaki says, watch Joe Flacco win the Super Bowl MVP. Could you imagine if the Niners got Flacco again in the Super Bowl? Oh, my God.
That'd be crazy. That'd be absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. I don't know.
He's looking good, man. The league is falling favorably on him. Like before, he was on death's doorstep, especially getting ousted by Lamar. But it feels like the league has just gotten softer and softer and softer. Where now you're just finding these guys in the league where they've fallen on kind of like a good tapestry of what the NFL is now, and they can kind of like create a little niche for themselves, right? Where before there were certain guys where it's almost kind of like why you get like Alice Campbell hanging around, and you get these older guys that the league got softer and it kind of just fell into their prime. They've been able to age gracefully with the league, a lot of these boys, come on, man, we're seeing these boys get hit and being out of games. Like, just think about this. Like, I brought this up to you, Jesse. Like, think about like the fringe quarterbacks that were like, okay, they were like starters, but nowhere near elite. Like Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer was like 6'5", 230 with a gun, and the half of his career got shut down because he played in a league that was barbaric on quarterbacks. He had so many injuries. But if Carson Palmer played today, he'd be looked at as like the next Ben Roethlisberger. He'd be throwing a country mile. Imagine what he could do with this level of defense.
Buku Sports says y'all are sleeping on Dolphins, on the D of the Dolphins and primetime TV. Listen, the Dolphins to me are the Dallas Cowboys of the AFC. I got to see him actually beat somebody good before I believe in them. I don't believe in the Dolphins at all. And if they beat the Ravens this week, I'll believe in them. But man, I don't. And then Keith says Buffalo almost lost to a non-Herbert Chargers. I get it, but every year we see a team fire their coach, and every year that team shocks somebody and does something crazy the very next week. It happens time and time and time again in this league. It's just the way it is. It's like the team gets fired up for a week. They play out of their minds no matter what's going on around them. And they either win a game that they shouldn't or almost win a game. So I don't put a lot of stock into that one. And Jay says, I enjoy this stream. You guys are awesome. Did I get all these? I don't know. Raziki says, watch Joe Flacco win a Super Bowl MVP. God, I hope not. And Roscoe says, Flacco beating us in the Super Bowl again. No, don't
handle that.
Is that our Roscoe?
Yeah, I think so.
I cannot handle that. I cannot handle more Flacco carnage.
So, Jesse, you brought this up before. You're the first person I heard bring up the Niners being 5-0 and losing those 3 games until they needed a bye because they were tired, right?
Yep.
Now that we're we're kind of nearing the end of the season and we've lost this game, do we look tired? Do you think we need a break?
Oh, 100%. I said it coming out of the bye that my thought was not that the 49ers couldn't start winning again, because we've seen them do that every year. That was never the question. My thing was, if they don't get the number 1 seed, I don't think that they were a team that can go 12 straight weeks. I just didn't see that happening. And I think that's starting to play out a little bit in front of our eyes. Even in the Cardinals game, they looked exhausted. They were missing tackles. The week before, they were missing tackles. It seems like that 5-week mark is kind of the limit for them right now. And thank God, it looks like they're going to get the bye week, which is fantastic. Then you get 2 tough games at home, and then you get another bye week for the Super Bowl. It's perfectly made for the 49ers. But if they don't get the number 1 seed, I will say right now, if they don't get the number 1 seed, they will not end up in the Super Bowl. As much as I think they are better than every team in the NFC, they will falter before they get there if they don't get the number 1 seed.
My big fear is that they're gonna go with Jason Verrett over Samuel Womack like they did last week, and or Darrell Luter. I want to see the Niners go with the youth, not the old guys. I don't know if I believe in Verrett. I don't know if I want to see Verrett. I mean, obviously Verrett's got a career. He's had a whole career.
Yeah, we saw Verrett.
He hasn't played in a long time, and Luter looks good in practice, and Womack is, I didn't like the fact that they deactivated Womack for Rhett last week.
That was surprising seeing him warm up. I was like, he's starting.
Roscoe says, wait, that was a dream? I'm a casual.
That's definitely nice. Roscoe.
Yeah. Keith says Buffalo almost. Thank you, Keith. I appreciate it. I saw that one though. Frank Tom Ocean says one more song. And then Riziki became a new member. Thank you so much, Riziki. All right. This time for real, we're out of here. Appreciate y'all. Much love. Peace.